Chapter 850. You only know how to feel sorry for Xiaoxi, don't you feel sorry for mother? Empress Dowager Zhou suddenly opened her eyes and stared at Emo Chuan with eyes filled with anger. Of course your son feels sorry for mother. Your son knows what mother is worried about. If mother is willing, your son is willing to follow mother's wishes. Emo Chuan lowered his eyes and replied. Empress Dowager Zhou blinked, not understanding what her son's words meant. But following this, she was filled with joy. She suddenly sat up on the bed and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Chuan, what did you say? Say what you just said again. She was excited and her voice slightly trembled. She grabbed Emo Chuan's hand and stared into his eyes. Emo Chuan looked up and said with a serious expression, your son isn't young anymore, your son wants to get married. You. What did you say? You want to get married? Empress Dowager Zhou almost did not dare believe her ears. She said in a trembling voice, Chuan, is what you said true? You wouldn't be saying this to make mother happy, right? She never would have dreamed that her son would change his mind in a single night. For her son's marriage, it was unknown how much she had worried about it, thinking about it day and night. But hearing her son suddenly say this, she did not dare believe it. Mother, your son is the emperor and his words carry weight. Does it look like your son is coaxing you? Emo Chuan's eyes sparkled and his expression was incomparably serious. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help nodding. She could see that the emperor was very serious. This time, it was like she saw a golden phoenix fall from the sky and land on her body. Even if a golden phoenix really fell, she wouldn't be this happy. Almost immediately, she lifted the quilt covering her body and got out of bed. She didn't even bother to put on her shoes and hurriedly walked out. As she walked, she raised her voice and shouted, Su Jin. Su Jin. Empress Dowager, what orders do you have? Su Jin never thought that Empress Dowager Zhou would call her this quickly. She quickly pushed open the door and saw Empress Dowager Zhou walking out of the room barefooted. She was instantly shocked, not knowing what kind of big matter had happened for the Empress Dowager to not even put on her shoes. Empress Dowager, the floor is cold, this servant will bring your shoes. How could Empress Dowager Zhou care about wearing shoes? Even if the sky fell, it wouldn't be as important as her son's marriage. She revealed a happy smile. Su Jin, quick, bring me the yellow annals in the temple. I want to choose a good date. Also, quickly instruct the Imperial Clothing Bureau to make new clothes for His Majesty. Also. What else is there? AI Jia can't remember. Su Jin, quickly help AI Jia think, what else did AI Jia miss? Su Jin had never seen Empress Dowager Zhou this happy before and was stunned. Hearing Empress Dowager Zhou's words, she was even more confused. But seeing Empress Dowager Zhou happy, she was also happy. She had been by Empress Dowager Zhou's side for several decades and she often saw Empress Dowager Zhou frowning and sighing. She rarely had a smile on her face, not to mention this kind of heartfelt smile. She couldn't help thinking what kind of miracle medicine the Emperor had given the Empress Dowager to make her so happy that she lost her composure. Chapter 851. However, Su Jin felt that the smile on the Emperor's face was a bit deep and she couldn't understand it. Empress Dowager, did something joyous happen? Please tell this servant and let this servant be happy as well. Su Jin saw that Empress Dowager Zhou was so happy that she couldn't speak. She would do this and then that, so she asked this with a smile. This widow was too happy and forgot to tell you. The Emperor is about to get married. Empress Dowager Zhou grabbed Su Jin's hand, unable to close her mouth from happiness. The Emperor is about to get married. Su Jin was stunned and couldn't help looking at the Emperor. Her heart was filled with wonder and her first thought was, Could the emperor have offended the Empress Dowager, so he made up this lie to make the Empress Dowager happy? But it didn't seem like it. Even if the emperor wanted to make the Empress Dowager happy, he had his ways. He would never joke about this kind of matter. Then it was true. But the emperor was getting married. Who was he marrying? It wouldn't be Miss Qin, right? Of course not. She immediately denied this thought. Miss Chen was already married off to the East Qin crown prince. It was impossible. Countless questions appeared in Su Jin's heart. Congratulations, Empress Dowager. Congratulations, Empress Dowager. This is truly great news. I wonder which family the emperor is marrying. Empress Dowager Zhou was stunned. She finally realized that she had forgotten the most important question. Emperor, do you have a candidate in mind? She smiled as she looked at her son on the side. Her brows were filled with a smile that she couldn't hide, like she was suddenly 10 years younger. Mo Chuan slightly shook his head. Your son does not have anyone in mind. Everything will be decided by mother. You're letting this widow decide. Empress Dowager Zhou was surprised and happy. She didn't dare believe it. Your meaning is that you want this widow to help you choose an empress. Mo Chuan said with a faint smile, your son believes in mother's eyes, but your son believes that one should choose a virtuous wife. The person your son wants to marry is our West Chu's empress, so it doesn't matter what this girl looks like. Your son hopes that she will be talented and have a broad mind. It would be best if she can be like mother, calm and composed. Only then can she be the head of the palace. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help nodding and saying in agreement, the emperor is truly thoughtful. Not bad, not bad. Virtuous comes first, beauty comes second. This widow still needs to consider this empress candidate. She began to think of all the talented women in the capital, and there were several dozen candidates. She felt that this one was good and that one was not bad, but she had never seen them before. Although the emperor said that he didn't care about his appearance, as the empress of the country, she couldn't be so ugly that she couldn't be seen by others. Furthermore, she had seen with her own eyes that the girl that the emperor liked was of first-class beauty. In the entire capital, it would be extremely difficult to find someone more beautiful than that girl. If the girl that the emperor picked out was only talented and virtuous but had no beauty, how could the emperor be satisfied? The more Empress Zhou loved her, the more thought the son. Dowager thought the more, the emperor was even thought. You was. Chapter 852. Empress Dowager Zhou thought about it and finally decided to follow her son's wishes. It was rare for her son to agree to marry, but her son might not be satisfied with the girl she liked, so it was better to let her son choose himself. As long as her son didn't marry the Qin family's girl, she was willing to marry anyone. Mother's meaning is that if your son likes it, mother will like it. If your son picks it, mother will agree. Mo Chuan's eyes slightly sparkled as his eyes filled with a glow of joy. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help smiling. Chuan, do you think mother is a dictator? If you like it, of course this widow will like it. This widow believes in your eyes. As long as it's a girl you pick, she will be our West Chu's future empress. She will not disappoint mother. She looked at Mo Chuan with an expectant gaze as a flower bloomed in her heart. Mo Chuan asked, then if your son likes a girl that doesn't come from an illustrious family and only has talent but no looks, mother won't mind? Empress Dowager Zhou was a bit stunned before saying, of course I don't mind, as long as the emperor likes it, it's fine. If you feel dissatisfied after marrying her, there are many good girls in this world. As the ruler of a country, you can marry as many as you want and you will find a good girl you like. Mo Chuan's face slightly sunk as he shook his head and said, there are 3,000 beauties, but your son will only drink one. Your son is not a fickle person, otherwise your son wouldn't have married. Since I've decided to marry her, I will wholeheartedly treat her. Other than her, your son will not marry a second girl. His expression was firm and his words were like iron. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help taking in a cold breath as she asked, "Emperor, what do you mean? You will only marry one girl in your life? Only one empress? Could it be you don't want a harem and more concubines?" She thought that the emperor was finally enlightened and wanted to spread the leaves for the royal family, but who would have thought that the emperor's thoughts were completely different? Only marry a single empress? This was definitely not possible. Mo Chuan said without any hesitation, "Your son doesn't want to." Empress Dowager Zhou's face instantly turned cold. She was prepared to scold her son, but she suddenly saw Su Jin desperately looking at her. Her heart was stunned and she didn't say anything. "Empress Dowager, this servant has just checked the calendar and it is an auspicious day in 3 days. How about we set the garden party in 3 days?" Su Jin respectfully asked. "All right, then we'll set it in 3 days." Empress Dowager Zhou nodded. "Emperor, you haven't come to court for 2 days, so you must have accumulated a lot of political affairs. You'd better hurry back to deal with them. I will handle the garden party alone, and when the time comes, I will make sure you will be satisfied. Then I'll trouble mother. Your son will leave now." After Mo Chuan bowed, he left. After Mo Chuan left, Empress Dowager Zhou asked Su Jin, "Why didn't you let this widow continue? If the emperor really did as he said and only married one girl in his life, if that girl couldn't give birth to a prince, then wouldn't the emperor have no descendants?" Chapter 853. Empress Dowager Zhou slowly nodded and sat down. She said, "Continue. After the emperor gets married, the Empress Dowager will slowly choose a suitable girl for him to take in as a concubine. Once the emperor knows of the benefits of this girl, even if the Empress Dowager doesn't help him, the emperor will impatiently want to take in more concubines." Su Jin had been in the palace for a long time, so she knew the history of the royal family. Since ancient times, there had never been an emperor who only had one empress. Which emperor couldn't wait to bring in all the beautiful girls in the world into their harem? In fact, it was not only the emperor who was like this. Even the princes, dukes, ministers, and nobles who only had one wife in their family was as rare as a phoenix feather or a unicorn horn. In the West Chu country, men were superior to women, so men took pride in having many wives. The more prominent a person was, the more beautiful wives they had. It was as if the number of concubines was directly related to a man's face. If the respected emperor only took one girl as his empress and didn't take in any concubines, he would be laughed at by everyone. So Empress Dowager Zhou was this angry and anxious. But when she heard Su Jin's words, she felt that it was reasonable, so she said, "You're right, this widow can't be too hasty. Everything has to be done step by step. We can't force the emperor too much. It's rare that he's willing to get married, so this widow has to take this chance to strike while the iron is hot and quickly marry an empress for him. Once he has a beauty to accompany him, he will slowly forget her." As for who this her was, Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin were both well aware of it. Empress Dowager Zhou thought about it and then said, "The emperor likes talented girls, he doesn't care about their family background. How about this, bring in all the talented girls in the capital who haven't been betrothed yet. As long as the girl has talent, their family background can be ignored. This widow will choose a good empress for the emperor." Su Jin agreed and left. Empress Dowager Zhou sat in the chair and rubbed her forehead. Not knowing why, she suddenly thought of Chen Ning at this time. This girl's talent was second to none, no one could compare to her. Her son's eyes were indeed not normal, the girl he liked was the most outstanding. It was a pity, that this girl had to marry someone. If she was only married, it wouldn't matter. As long as the emperor liked her, a divorce letter would solve everything, but she had to marry the emperor's nephew. If it was just a nephew, it wouldn't matter, but Chu Xiaoyang was the previous emperor's son. How her son obtained the throne, Empress Dowager Zhou was very clear on it. If it wasn't for her son taking Chuan's throne in the past, she wouldn't be able to face her ancestors. But now her son was the emperor. Although Chu Xiaoyang was given the title of king, he would still be criticized by everyone. So no matter what, Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't let her son steal Chu Xiaoyang's throne and steal his princess, otherwise Empress Dowager Zhou wouldn't be able to face her ancestors after she died. Chapter 854. With a divorce letter, Chu Xiaoyang and Qin Ning became strangers. Then Qin Ning was married off to East Qin, traveling tens of thousands of miles. She would never see her son again. Empress Dowager Zhou had finally gotten rid of one of her worries. But thinking of Qin Ning's appearance, she couldn't help feeling pity for her son. Such a good girl had actually married off to East Qin, that East Qin crown prince was truly luckier than her son. Empress Dowager Zhou shook her head and threw all her thoughts to the back of her head. There were still 3 days, so she had to make arrangements. She had to find a talented and beautiful girl to be her son's empress. The emperor was going to choose an empress. This news seemed to grow wings as it spread through the streets of the capital in a single night, causing an uproar in the capital. Moreover, they also heard that the palace was going to hold a garden party in 3 days. All the talented girls in the capital would receive invitations, regardless of their family background. As long as the girl was talented, they would have a chance of being invited to the palace. This information made the young ladies of prominent families extremely resentful, because they now had many more powerful competitors. However, it made the young ladies of commoner families cheer. They never dreamed that they would have the opportunity to enter the palace, and now this opportunity was right in front of them. As long as they received the invitation and entered the palace, they would have a chance to obtain the emperor's favor. If they could enter the emperor's eyes, they would become phoenixes, going from a common girl to the empress of the world. This was simply the dream of every girl. Especially when they heard that the empress selection would focus on talent and not appearance. So, these girls who did not have outstanding looks were all secretly happy. In these 3 days, they did not let go of their books. They wanted to show off their talents at the garden party and amaze the world with a single move. But those beautiful girls weren't discouraged. Although they valued talent and not appearance, how could they enter the emperor's eyes with only talent and virtue? Which man in this world did not like a delicate and beautiful face? They rushed to make new clothes and jewelry, hoping to attract the emperor's attention with their peerless beauty on that day. In a single night, all the bookstores, embroidery shops, and jewelry stores were filled with young girls. They were thin and fat, wearing red and green, attracting the eyes of countless people. The crowd surrounded these young girls and discussed who was more beautiful, who was more talented, and who had more hope of entering the middle palace. 3 days later, all the young girls who received invitations arrived at the palace gates early. Then they were sent to the royal garden in a sedan chair. Whether they were beautiful or ugly, all the young girls were dressed beautifully with pearls around them. In all these years, this was the first time there were so many young girls in the palace. The palace guards and eunuchs couldn't even look at them. The young girls walked in groups of 2s and 3s, strolling in the imperial garden. They greeted each other politely with a smile, exchanging pleasantries. However, their smiles were insincere. Their faces were harmonious, but their hearts were not. They only knew that the emperor would choose one of them to be the empress today, but they didn't know how he would choose. Every one of them was anxious and fearful, and at the same time harbored deep hostility towards the young girl beside them. They wanted to find out the truth from each other's words, but they also wanted to conceal their own strength. They schemed and schemed against each other, fighting endlessly. Chapter 855. One group was made up of noble girls born in aristocratic families, while the other group was made up of commoner girls who enjoyed fame but had no status. The noble girls from good backgrounds looked down on the commoner girls from ordinary families. They could not understand why the Empress Dowager would invite these low-status girls into the palace. With just them, did they want to become the Empress of the world? They were dreaming. But when they saw that the commoner girls were wearing clothes that weren't as bright and beautiful as theirs and that they were wearing ordinary hairpins and beads on their heads, they couldn't help but be secretly happy. They thought that it was fortunate that the Empress Dowager had invited this group of unsophisticated girls into the palace. When they stood with them, it was like a golden phoenix among a group of black crows. With the contrast of these commoner girls, he seemed even more gorgeous and noble, dazzling and dazzling. When the commoner girls saw the noble girls with their noses pointing up, they didn't have any good feelings towards them. They originally looked up to these noble girls and were filled with envy, but when they saw their cold and arrogant faces, they felt disgusted. They thought, what is the use of looking good or wearing good clothes? With this kind of hateful personality, it would be strange if the emperor liked them. In the large royal garden, it was hard for the noble girls and commoner girls to meet. As long as they met, it would be hard for them to not argue with each other and ridicule each other. In the pavilion on the fake mountain, there was a table of snacks. Empress Dowager Zhou and Nemo Chuan were sitting there, looking down at the royal garden from above. The delicate and clear voices of the girls entered their ears from time to time. Hearing the girls arguing with each other and secretly scheming against each other, Mo Chuan was indifferent. There was no expression on his calm face as his eyes swept over the faces of the girls. It seemed like he had no interest in them, but he was interested in them. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't sit still. Although she didn't say anything, she couldn't help revealing a look of anger in her eyes. It should be known that these young girls were all people that she had carefully selected and invited into the palace. She had considered every one of them over and over again. They were either talented or had outstanding moral character. Of course, there was no lack of beautiful and alluring girls. But she never would have thought that before the official Empress selection began, these girls would fight amongst themselves. At this time, two girls met near the fake mountain. One was a famous noble girl in the capital city, with top talent and beauty. She was also one of Empress Dowager Zhou's candidates for the Empress position, and the other was a common girl from a normal background. She could write poems, sing, and dance, so she was famous for her beauty. The two girls immediately began to fight, talking back and forth. They argued until their faces turned red and their words were very intense. The reason was very simple. The commoner girl had accidentally stepped on the noble girl's skirt, leaving a black footprint on the snow-white skirt. The noble girl had always disliked the commoner girl, and at this time, she used this as a pretext to make a fuss. She was not willing to let the commoner girl off her skirt. How could the common girl pay? Even if she sold her entire family, she wouldn't be able to pay for her skirt. She could only helplessly apologize in a low voice. Chapter 856. That commoner girl couldn't take it and turned to leave, but the noble girl pulled on her sleeve. Not only did they start a war of words, they almost made a move. The two of them quarreling became louder and louder, alarming all the young girls in the garden. They all gathered to watch the show. The young girls all had the attitude of watching a good play. They gathered around to watch the show, but no one came forward to stop them. In their eyes, these two girls were strong enemies, so it was best if they fought fiercely. When both sides were heavily injured, the final winner would be them. Seeing this scene, Empress Dowager Zhou's face was so dark that it almost dripped water. Su Jin, kick out all the girls below for this widow, don't leave a single one. They have no talent and no virtue, how could they be fit to lead the palace? She angrily said. Empress Dowager, your meaning is that we should also kick out the girls who didn't say anything? Su Jin secretly clicked her tongue. It seemed like the Empress Dowager was truly angered. But it was no wonder, these girls had truly let down the Empress Dowager's good intentions. Even she didn't look at any of them, not to mention the Emperor's eyes. Mo Chuan was sitting beside Empress Dowager Zhou. Hearing Empress Dowager Zhou's words, he revealed a faint smile and did not say anything. Su Ji knew that the emperor did not have any good feelings towards these girls, so she followed Empress Dowager Zhou's orders without any hesitation. There were over 10 girls watching the show. While they were happily watching, a group of eunuchs suddenly came out of the garden. They were holding fly whisks, chasing them out of the garden like they were flies. We were invited by the Empress Dowager to tour the garden. What right do you dog servants have to chase us away? You really are bold, daring to chase me away. Do you know who my father is? Bastard, a servant like you dares to touch me with your dirty hands. I am the future empress. The young girls were all filled with rage, putting on airs and scolding. The eunuchs all had cold eyes and cold faces, giving fake smiles. Ladies, we are following the Empress Dowager's orders. The Empress Dowager said that there are too many flies and mosquitoes in the garden today, so staying here will only disturb the emperor's mood. She told the servants to chase them all out, not leaving a single one behind. Don't feel wronged, you can only blame yourselves for being too talkative and having too many schemes. With that, he chased the 2 girls who were bickering and the group of girls who were watching the fun out of the imperial garden, stuffed them into the palanquin, and sent them out of the imperial palace. These young girls had all entered the palace with the dream of becoming the empress. They had spent a lot of effort, material, and financial resources on this trip to the garden. Who knew that when they entered the palace, they didn't even see the emperor's appearance? They only had the soles of their shoes stained with the soil of the imperial garden before they were mercilessly chased out of the palace. They had been crying since they were sent into the sedan and cried all the way until they were out of the palace. When these girls came out of the sedan, they cried all the way until they left. This was because they all looked the same. They all cried until their eyes were red and their noses were swollen. It was almost impossible to tell which girl was their family's young miss. There were quite a few girls invited into the palace this time. Although several dozen were chased out, there were still several dozen left in the royal garden. Chapter 857. It was a good thing she wasn't nearby at the time, otherwise she wouldn't have been able to resist going over to take a look. At that time, she wouldn't be one of the people being kicked out of the palace. But after this matter, all the girls became very careful, paying attention to their words and actions. They were very careful with every step they took, being very cautious. They were afraid that if they made a mistake, it would fall into the eyes of their superior. But no matter how careful they were, it was hard to avoid accidents. Just as the girls were afraid that they would make a mistake, a scream suddenly rang out. "Ah, there's a snake! There's a snake!" A maid in charge of cleaning the garden pointed at the tree next to her as her face turned pale with fright. When the nearby girls heard this, they all cried out in shock. These girls were usually spoiled, not writing poems, but what they were most afraid of was a cold and poisonous snake. Hearing that there was a snake, some of them fell to the ground in fear, some of them were stunned, some of them were trembling, and some of them were screaming out. When Empress Dowager Zhou saw this, she revealed a look of disappointment. She did not say anything this time and just looked at Su Jin. Su Jin immediately understood Empress Dowager Zhou's meaning. "Empress Dowager, this servant will send people to chase them out, not leaving a single one." She looked down on these girls that lost their composure when they heard there was a snake. They only heard someone say there was a snake, but they didn't even see the shadow of a snake, yet they were so scared that their faces turned pale. Just based on this, they weren't fit to be the future empress. Su Jin looked at the girls with disdain. When she was prepared to give the order, she suddenly heard the voice of a young girl. "Everyone, don't panic and don't be afraid. As long as you don't move or shout, the snake won't attack you." That voice was calm and clear, not panicking at all. It had a comforting effect. The young girl who had been screaming stopped almost immediately. Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin couldn't help looking in the direction of the voice. They saw a light green clothed girl with her back facing them, standing in front of the maid that found the snake. She calmly asked, "Where is the snake?" "I'll catch it. Over there. Over there." The maid closed her eyes and randomly pointed at the tree. With a poochie sound, the green-clothed girl began to laugh. "Everyone, don't be afraid, that isn't a snake at all, just a layer of snake skin. This snake skin is a good thing and has a high medicinal value, so we can't waste it." After she said this, she stood on her tiptoes and carefully took the snake skin from the tree, handing it over to the maid. "This is from the palace, so I ask elder sister to send it to the doctor. I think the doctor will have a use for it." The palace maid trembled as she received it and discovered that it was indeed a layer of shed snakeskin. She couldn't help but blush and repeatedly thank the green-clothed girl before leaving with the snake skin. "This green-clothed girl is a bit interesting, not to worry." Su Jin and Su Jin saw this. In the pavilion, Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin saw this scene. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help giving a slight nod, praising the green-clothed girl. But the green-clothed girl had her back to the person in the pavilion all along and did not turn her head, so he could not see what she looked like and did not know who she was. Chapter 858. Empress Dowager Zhou paid attention to her and then looked over at the emperor beside her. She saw Mo Chuan's eyes pausing on the green-clothed girl's back for a bit. Although Mo Chuan quickly looked away, Empress Dowager Zhou already had an idea in her heart. Su Jin. Empress Dowager Zhou called Su Jin again, not saying another word. Su Jin pursed her lips into a smile and replied, "Empress Dowager, this servant understands." She was the same as Empress Dowager Zhou, having an inexplicable good impression of the green-clothed girl that she had never seen before. Su Jin had followed Empress Dowager Zhou for several decades and already knew her intentions. She wanted her to ask about the green-clothed girl's name and then kick out the other girls that couldn't be seen in public. She was prepared to give the order, but when she looked over, she was suddenly stunned. At this time, the panic caused by the snake had subsided, and the girls once again returned to their normal state. Some of them looked noble, some dignified, and they looked completely different from the scared and pale faces just now. These girls had treated the green-clothed girl as a life-saving bodhisattva, but now that the danger had passed, the girls couldn't help looking over the green-clothed girl, revealing looks of disdain on their faces. No one thanked the green-clothed girl and acted like they didn't see her. They walked past her and even gave a cold snort. The green-clothed girl didn't care and left by herself, not associating with the other girls. When she walked away, Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin both gave an "aw" sound. Their voices were filled with indescribable shock. This was because when the green-clothed girl stood there without moving, her figure was like a weak willow in the wind, slender and graceful. But when she walked, it revealed her flaw. She walked with 1 foot high and 1 foot low. She was actually a cripple. Although her limp wasn't that bad, it was still a flaw that was hard to hide. A pity, a pity. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help shaking her head as her eyes revealed a look of regret. She had a good impression of the green-clothed girl, but seeing that she was actually a cripple, the thoughts that had just appeared disappeared. "Then the Empress Dowager's meaning is?" Su Jin said in a soft voice. Empress Dowager Zhou's eyes stayed on the green-clothed girl's limping figure for a bit and her heart filled with pity. This girl is also pitiful, there's no need to chase her out of the palace. Her meaning was that other than the green-clothed girl, none of the other girls would be left. Su Jin understood and immediately gave the order. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen girls were sent out of the palace. Empress Dowager Zhou had spent quite a bit of thought on the Emperor's Empress selection. Empress Dowager Zhou had spent quite a bit of thought on the Emperor's Empress selection this time. As for the word talent, it was not difficult. There were many ways to test a girl's talent. What made it difficult for her was the word moral character. This was not something that could be determined by just a test. But how could she determine a girl's moral character in a short period of time? Empress Dowager Zhou thought about it and thought of this secret method. When these young girls entered the Imperial Garden, they were originally nervous, but they didn't expect to see the Emperor and Empress Dowager. Instead, they were told that the Emperor and Empress Dowager had important matters to attend to and couldn't attend, so they were told to play by themselves. Chapter 859. The young girls walked around the royal garden in groups of 3 to 5. Their moods became more and more relaxed and their faces were filled with smiles. This was the effect Empress Dowager Zhou wanted. This was because a person could only show their true self when they were relaxed. Their strong and weak points were all clear to see. It had to be said, Empress Dowager Zhou's move was very clever. No matter how smart the girls were, how could they hide themselves like Empress Dowager Zhou? How could they compare to her scheming and schemes as deep as the sea? The pavilion Empress Dowager Zhou and Imo Chuan were in was in a very good position. Although it was high up and they could see every corner of the royal garden, because of the flowers, even if the girls in the royal garden looked up, they wouldn't be able to see the people in the pavilion. They could only see the green trees peeking out from the eaves. No one would have thought that Empress Dowager Zhou and the Emperor would be secretly watching their every move and word. As for the previous 2 scenes, stepping on the skirt and the snake skin on the tree, they were all arranged by Empress Dowager Zhou to test the girl's character. Although the method was a bit strange, the effect was clear. How could the girls have thought that they would expose their bad habits and be instantly eliminated? This kind of test came one after another and several dozen girls were sent out of the royal palace. The girls found that there were fewer and fewer companions in the garden. There were many smart people among them who quickly realized the mystery and became even more careful with their words and actions. After a round of secret tests, there were still around 20 girls left in the garden which satisfied Empress Dowager Zhou. Emperor, the girls in the garden have all passed this widow's test, so they should all have good character. Now it's time to test their talents and it's time for us to show ourselves. Let's go. Empress Dowager Zhou held Su Jin's hand and slowly stood up. Mother's strange idea, your son admires it. Although Mo Chuan didn't say a word, he clearly saw everything that was happening in the royal garden. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart because the only person who could think of this strange method to test their character, since the ancient times, was probably only Empress Dowager Zhou. This widow has no other requests, I just want to help you choose a virtuous and talented empress. Seeing you loving each other and being a harmonious couple, this widow's wish is satisfied. Empress Dowager Zhou looked at Mo Chuan with a deep gaze. She held Su Jin's hand as they walked out of the pavilion and down the fake mountain. The girls were already gathered in the Happy Heart Pavilion in the royal garden. They were lined up in 2 rows, silently standing there. They were all looking down, not daring to even breathe. Because they had already received the notice that the Emperor and the Empress Dowager were about to come here to test their talents. How could they not be nervous? The Empress Dowager has arrived. The Empress Dowager has arrived. Following the eunuch's loud announcement, the young girls immediately prostrated themselves on the ground and cried out in unison, "Long live the Emperor! Long live the Empress Dowager! Everyone rise!" Empress Dowager Zhou raised her hand with a faint smile, indicating the girls to stand up. Mo Chuan sat in the main seat with Empress Dowager Zhou sitting beside him. The girls bowed 9 times according to the rules before they dared to stand up. However, none of them dared to raise their heads. Chapter 860. Emperor, that had to be the Emperor. They had come to the palace today to see the Emperor, especially those commoner girls. They had never dreamed that one day they would be able to enter the palace and see the Emperor's face. Even if they weren't chosen as the Empress, being able to see the Emperor was enough for them to brag to their neighbors in the village. Empress Dowager Zhou's eyes slowly swept over the faces of the girls, carefully looking at each one of them. Because the future Empress would be chosen from among these girls. Empress Dowager Zhou didn't expect to see the green-clothed girl in the crowd. Her eyes couldn't help pausing on her. It was a pity that she was the same as the other girls. Her face was lowered and she could only see her smooth forehead, her snow-white skin, and her soft black hair. Woo, it seems like this girl's family background is normal and she doesn't come from a noble family. Empress Dowager Zhou thought in her heart. She could see with a single glance that the green-clothed girl was wearing a normal jade hairpin. The green robe she was wearing was also very normal and the material was very normal. But when she wore it, the most inconspicuous outfit added an indescribable strength of character to her, making her stand out from the crowd. Although she was in the crowd, she was still the most eye-catching one. It was a pity, a pity. Everything was good, but she was crippled. This future West Chu Empress, how could she be a cripple? It seemed like she was not fated to be the Empress. Empress Dowager Zhou's eyes calmly looked over the green-clothed girl and turned to the next girl. After looking over the 20 girls, Empress Dowager Zhou had an idea in her heart. Although the girls had their heads lowered, Empress Dowager Zhou could still recognize a few familiar girls. Among them were the ones she liked the most, Xia Yuyan and Wu Yu'er. These two girls had entered the palace to show off their poetry and painting skills. Although they had been overshadowed by Qin Ning, if it wasn't for Qin Ning, their talents would have been outstanding. What made Empress Dowager Zhou surprised was that Minister Lu's daughter Lu Wanting was not chosen and was not among the girls. Girls, there is no need to be reserved. This widow has heard that you are all famous talented girls in the capital city, being well-read and talented, so this widow has invited you all to play in the palace. As long as everyone is happy playing, it's fine. What do you think about the scenery of the imperial gardens? Empress Dowager Zhou spoke in an amiable manner as she looked at the girls below with a smile. The girls were so nervous that they didn't even dare breathe. Hearing Empress Dowager Zhou's gentle voice and the smile on her face, they couldn't help relaxing. They thought in their hearts. They said that the Empress Dowager was strict, but who would have thought that she would speak in such a gentle voice? The fear in their hearts instantly disappeared. Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, Empress, Empress Dowager Dowager said with a beautiful voice. After all, she had entered the palace once and seen Empress Dowager Zhou, so she was not as restrained as the other girls. She raised her snow-white and delicate face and revealed a shy smile at Empress Dowager Zhou, but her eyes were slightly looking at the Emperor sitting beside Empress Dowager Zhou. Chapter 861. Yu does not dare accept the Empress Dowager's praise. Wu Yu'er's face turned red and she lowered her head. She was very smart. She knew that she had to attract the Emperor's attention first if she wanted to win. As expected, when she opened her mouth to talk to Empress Dowager Zhou, not only did she attract the envious gazes of the other girls, she also attracted the Emperor's gaze. Wu Yu'er's heart began to beat fast and her face became even redder, just like a shy and charming rose flower. The young girls couldn't help thinking, yeah, she really is pretty. Even the Empress Dowager is praising her beauty, the Emperor will definitely like her. But how could the young girls guess Empress Dowager Zhou's thoughts? When the young girls thought that Empress Dowager Zhou was going to decide on Wu Yu'er for the Emperor, Empress Dowager Zhou actually smiled and changed the topic. This widow feels that this Happy Heart Pavilion is very good, but it's missing a couplet. So this widow found the most knowledgeable scholar from the Han Lin Academy to write a couplet for the Happy Heart Pavilion, but he could only write the first half. No matter how hard he thought, he couldn't write the second half. This couplet doesn't have a second half, isn't that a pity? So this widow can only thicken my face to ask the girls here, is there anyone who can help this widow solve this problem and come up with a second half? Everyone here is the most famous talented girl in the capital. I think you won't disappoint this widow, right? Her words were very humorous, making all the young girls laugh. Their hearts became even more intimate with Empress Dowager Zhou. They all understood in their hearts that the Empress Dowager was starting to test their talent and knowledge, so all of them instantly raised their spirits. Empress Dowager, please say the first half. This little girl is willing to try and solve the Empress Dowager's problems. One of the young girls gathered her courage and bravely said. Empress Dowager Zhou revealed a faint smile to her and said, "All right, Su Jin, take out the first half and show it to the girls." "Yes, Empress Dowager." Su Jin opened the box she had already prepared on the side and took out a scroll, slowly opening it. The young girls were filled with excitement as they all looked at the scroll. They saw that the words on the scroll were very natural, with strong strokes. Everyone's eyes lit up as they thought, "Good words, good words." When the scroll was completely opened, the first half appeared in front of everyone's eyes. If there are worms in the water, it will be muddy. If there are fish in the water, it will be fishing. Water, water, water. When the young girls saw this first half, their hearts filled with joy. They secretly thought, "What's so hard about this first half? It's very easy." They opened their mouths to say it. But thinking about it carefully, they felt it. The first half of the couplet seemed easy, but after thinking about it, he realized that it was extremely difficult. The entire first half of the couplet was closely linked to the word water, especially the last 5 words. The 3 words river, lake, river, and lake had the word water, and the 3 waters combined to form the word meow. Yeah. This is a very hard second half. No wonder even the Grand Secretary of the Hanlin Academy couldn't match the second half of the couplet. The girls began to think hard. Some raised their heads to look at the white clouds in the sky, some lowered their heads to look at the gurgling brook outside, some frowned, and some twisted their hands. Empress Dowager Zhou's smiling eyes swept over the faces of the young girls. She knew that although this couplet was extremely difficult, it was not absolute. As long as one's mind was nimble, coupled with quick thinking, one could match it. Chapter 862. Xia Yuyan did not disappoint Empress Dowager Zhou's expectations. She thought about it for a bit and thought of the second verse. When she was prepared to write it down, she suddenly felt that one of the words wasn't right. She stopped and began to think about it again. Suddenly, her body slightly trembled. She saw a faint green dress flash in front of her and a young girl limped out of the crowd, walking towards the white paper table in front of her. The green-clothed girl instantly attracted everyone's eyes. Yeah, she's actually a cripple. Did she come up with a matching couplet? She really is smart. So what if she's smart, she's still a cripple? The emperor definitely won't marry a cripple as his empress. The young girls couldn't help whispering. The green-clothed girl ignored the chatter behind her and directly walked in front of the table. There was already a eunuch that had prepared some ink. She dipped her finger in the ink and began to write. Not long after, she finished writing. When the ink was a bit dry, she picked up the second verse and gave it to the eunuch on the side. This little girl has already written the second verse, I asked the Empress Dowager to appraise it. The surrounding young girls all took in a cold breath. Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin's eyes went wide in shock, staring at the green-clothed girl without blinking. The young girls were shocked at her speed, but Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin were shocked at her appearance. They had only seen the back of this green-clothed girl before. She was very beautiful, but it was a pity that she was crippled. The two of them felt this was a pity, thinking that this girl's appearance was not bad. If she wasn't crippled, she would be a very suitable candidate. The green-clothed girl was facing Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin at this time. She slightly raised her head and her face was completely exposed to the two of them. The faint sunlight shined down on her face, clearly illuminating all the details on her face. Her skin was as clear as jade, even more delicate than porcelain. However, Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin only took a look at her and their hearts skipped a beat. They were thinking how this girl was this ugly. There was a palm-sized purple-red mark that extended from her left brow to her right cheek. It was like someone had slapped her face, but Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin knew that this was not a slap, but rather a birthmark. Ugly. Really ugly. Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin quickly looked away. The pity they felt for this green-clothed girl became even heavier. It was a pity, a pity. Not only was this girl a cripple, but she was also extremely ugly. Even if she was talented and virtuous, it would be difficult for her to find a good home in this era where appearance was everything. At this time, the eunuch brought over the green-clothed girl's second verse. Empress Dowager Zhou had already rejected that girl in her heart. She knew that no matter how well she dressed, with that ugly face of hers, she could not enter the emperor's eyes. She casually glanced at the second half of the couplet, and then her eyes suddenly widened. The young girl's handwriting was neat and tidy. Every stroke was written with force. Her finger dipped in the ink and the strokes were full and smooth. Although it couldn't be considered a masterpiece, it had a unique flavor. Below the wood is the root, above the wood is the end. Moo, 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 pine, cypress, camphor. Chapter 863. The second half of the green-clothed girl's couplet was connected to the first half, perfectly matching each other. It was a perfect match, not even changing a single word. Emperor, what do you think of this second half? Empress Dowager Zhou gave the second half to Mo Chuan. Mo Chuan took it and seriously looked over it before giving a slight nod. Very good. He looked up and looked over at the green-clothed girl. His deep eyes fell on the purple-red birthmark on the other side's face for a while. The green-clothed girl seemed to sense his gaze. Her long eyelashes drooped down, covering her clear and pure eyes. Her eyes were focused on her nose, and her nose was focused on her heart. Even when the wind messed up her hair, she didn't reach out to pull it back. She did not reveal an inferior expression because of her ugly face, and she did not feel flattered because of the emperor's gaze on her. Her face did not turn red, her heart did not beat fast, she was neither servile nor overbearing, she was not shocked at all. That graceful manner and appearance made Empress Dowager Zhou feel even more admiration for her. Such a dignified and courteous manner was even better than when he was younger. She was truly a rare, talented and virtuous young lady. If she wasn't this ugly and a cripple, even if she came from a low background, this widow would have chosen her as the empress, but she... Empress Dowager Zhou thought in her heart. Her eyes couldn't help looking over at the green-clothed girl, but when she saw the birthmark on her face, her heart skipped a beat. Forget it, what use is there in being virtuous? The emperor will not like her no matter what, not to mention the fact that the Westchu Empress can't be an ugly monster and can't be a cripple. Otherwise, if it was spread, wouldn't we become the laughing stock of the other countries? Empress Dowager Zhou thought about it and decided to exclude the green-clothed girl from the list. She looked at Xia Yuyan with a smile. Miss Xia, this widow can see that you've also come up with a second half, so why haven't you written it yet? Xia Yuyan was thinking about the second half of the green-clothed girl's answer and found that the other side had matched it very well. Comparing her own second half to the other side's, she couldn't help being shocked. She also saw the green-clothed girl's lame foot and the shocking birthmark on the other side's face, she couldn't help being shocked. She had already given up, but seeing the green-clothed girl's description and hearing Empress Dowager Zhou ask her, she was filled with a trace of hope. Yes, Empress Dowager. Yu Yan will write the second half. Xia Yuyan slowly walked forward and wrote the second part of the couplet that she had long thought of. She handed it to the eunuch beside her and then respectfully stood below. She knew that Empress Dowager Zhou wanted to see her second verse because she wanted to support her and give her a chance to show her face. She did not want to miss this once-in-a-lifetime chance. So what if the green-clothed girl's second half was better than her? With her feet and her handicap, the Empress Dowager would never like her. Not only would the Empress Dowager not like her, the Emperor would not even look at her. Her heart filled with pride as she looked over at the green-clothed girl. Not bad, not bad. Empress Dowager Zhou saw Xia Yuyan's second verse and was filled with praise. Although this second half of the couplet was not as neat and ingenious as the green-clothed girl's, it could still be considered a masterpiece. Chapter 864. Empress Dowager Zhou was not stingy with her praise, making Xia Yuyan feel as if she was floating. She couldn't hide the smile on her lips. But Xia Yuyan still tried to control her smile. She came forward and bowed. The Empress Dowager is too kind. Yuyan is not as good as the Empress Dowager says. It is this elder sister's talent that is better than Yuyan's. She was naturally referring to the green-clothed girl. Empress Dowager Zhou said with a smile, "You are humble and not arrogant, that is rare." "Emperor, what do you think of Miss Xia's second verse?" Xia Yuyan instantly became nervous and her heart began to beat fast. Her eyes stared at her feet, not daring to look up, but her ears perked up. When Empress Dowager Zhou was talking about the green-clothed girl, she only praised her once, but when she was talking about Xia Yuyan, she praised her again and again. Everyone present could hear the mystery behind this, especially the young girls. They couldn't help feeling disappointed. They all looked at Xia Yuyan with unconvinced eyes. Wasn't it just her family background being a bit better? Wasn't it just a couplet? Why did the Empress Dowager look at her differently? In terms of talent, it was clearly the green-clothed girl who was better than her. That's fine. Mo Chuan looked over and softly said. His evaluation was still 2 words. But when Xia Yuyan heard this, she felt it was filled with disgust. That's fine. This was clearly saying that her second verse wasn't as good as the green-clothed girl's. She bit her lips and felt very wronged in her heart as tears began to fall from her eyes. Empress Dowager Zhou also heard the Emperor's meaning. She thought that the Emperor did not like this girl. Forget it, since there are other good girls, he can pick and choose. Anyways, no matter what, she had to arrange this marriage for him today. The hearts of the young girls relaxed like a stone falling to the ground. Their hearts were filled with hope again, so their thoughts began to flow and they began to write beautiful sentences. In an instant, there were several dozen girls who wrote down their second verses and presented them. Empress Dowager Zhou looked over it. In terms of matching and ingenious thoughts, the green-clothed girl's second verse was the best. She didn't say anything and just gave the second verses to the Emperor, letting him pick them himself. "Emperor, which one do you think is the best? Pick one and this widow will have someone carve it, placing it on both sides of the Happy Heart Pavilion." Empress Dowager Zhou said with a double meaning. Mo Chuan was very patient today, staying by Empress Dowager Zhou's side from beginning to end. Whatever Empress Dowager Zhou told him to do, he did it without any half-hearted intentions, making Empress Dowager Zhou very satisfied. She thought that her son would just go through the motions and leave everything for her to make the decision. He would make the right choice. Yu Zhou thought that Dowager family. Although Empress Dowager Zhou wanted her son to get married as soon as possible, she also wanted to help him find a lover. Especially when she saw her son's beloved girl marrying to another country, he was so sad that he disappeared for 2 days and 2 nights. At that time, she had made up her mind. As long as her son was happy, she could give up anything and everything. Mo Chuan looked over all the girls' couplets and then pointed at one of them without any hesitation. You is son to say. The girls couldn't see which one he was referring to. Their hearts were in their throats, and even their breathing had stopped. Chapter 865. Because the second half of the couplet that Chuan was pointing at was written by the green-clothed girl. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help looking up at Chuan. Her lips slightly moved, as if she wanted to ask, Emperor, did you make the wrong choice? But she saw that Chuan was focused on the couplet and not looking at the green-clothed girl, so she swallowed the words she was about to say. It seems like the emperor only meant what he said. He didn't want to choose that ugly girl as his empress. Woo, not bad, not bad. Just from the couplets alone, this ugly girl's second line is indeed the most beautiful. Empress Dowager Zhou thought. She looked at the girl in green's couplet and recited, if there are worms in the water, it will be turbid. If there are fish in the water, it will be fishing. Water, 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 rivers, lakes, lakes. Below the tree is the root, above the tree is the end. Wood, 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 pine, cypress, camphor, forest. Wonderful. It was indeed wonderful. I also think that this second verse is the most appropriate. Su Jin, immediately order people to carve it on the pillars on both sides of the Happy Heart Pavilion. From today onwards, the Happy Heart Pavilion will be changed to Songjiang Pavilion. Emperor, what do you think? Mother's words match your son's thoughts. The Song River Pavilion is very good. Chuan replied with a faint smile. All right, then it's settled. Empress Dowager Zhou kept praising, only praising the second verse. She didn't mention the green-clothed girl at all and didn't ask for her name. It was clear she didn't consider her a choice for the empress at all. The young girls were all intelligent people and immediately saw through it. They were all secretly delighted and thought, no matter how good the girl in green's second half was, so what if it was carved on the Song River Pavilion? Didn't the emperor and the empress dowager still look down on her? An ugly freak is an ugly freak. Not only was she ugly, she was also a cripple. If it was her, with her ugly appearance, no matter what, she would be too embarrassed to show her face in public, let alone dare to enter the imperial palace and become the empress. She was just a pheasant, how could she fly up the branches and become a phoenix? Dream on. The green-clothed girl stood in the middle of the girls, looking calm and composed. Of course she understood Empress Dowager Zhou's meaning, but there was not a trace of sadness, disappointment, or depression on her face. She did not feel proud or happy that her couplet was chosen. She had a calm expression, like nothing had happened at all. Although Empress Dowager Zhou deliberately ignored her, she couldn't help sneaking glances at her. The more she looked, the more she appreciated this green-clothed girl. This was truly being unfazed by favor or disgrace. It was as if she had suddenly found a piece of shining gold in a pile of mud. She wanted to pick it up, but she felt that the gold was stained with dirt. If she picked it up, she would dirty her clothes. A pity, this was truly a pity. Empress Dowager Zhou suppressed the regret in her heart. She looked at the young girls and spoke again with a smile. I want to test you again. I have a question that I want you to answer. You don't have to worry about anything. Just answer whatever you think. I want to hear the truest answer. Empress you. Dowager. The girls replied and together. Empress Dowager Zhou took a sip of tea and moistened her throat before slowly saying, if you become the empress. As soon as they heard the word empress, the faces of the girls all became hot. Their eyes sparkled and their hearts jumped. He heard Empress Dowager Zhou continue to say, this widow and the emperor fell into the water at the same time, who would you save first? Chapter 866. You don't need to panic, this widow is just giving an example. This widow and the emperor don't know how to swim, so if only you know how to swim and you can only save one person, the other person will drown. In this situation, who would you choose to save? Empress Dowager Zhou had a smile on her face as she looked at the girls one by one. Which one will answer first? She said with a smile. The girls all bit their lips, their faces revealing awkward expressions. How could they answer this question? How could they choose? If they chose to save the emperor, the Empress Dowager would drown, but if they chose to save the Empress Dowager, the emperor would drown. No matter who they chose, they would offend either the Empress Dowager or the emperor. Empress Dowager Zhou asked this twice, but none of the girls came forward to answer. They all lowered their heads and thought about it with furrowed brows. This was even harder to answer than the couplet from before. Even Su Jin began to sympathize with these girls, secretly blaming Empress Dowager Zhou. What kind of strange question did the Empress Dowager ask? How could these girls answer? If it was her, she wouldn't know how to answer. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help looking at Imo Chuan and saying in a soft voice, "Emperor, your question seems to have stumped everyone. Tell your mother, what is the correct answer to this question?" Her voice was filled with curiosity that she couldn't suppress. Imo Chuan's lips curled into a smile as he said, "Mother, 1,000 people will have 1,000 answers, perhaps there will only be 2 answers. Your son does not know what the correct answer is, but as for their answers, the one that mother thinks is the most pleasing to the ear is the correct answer." "You slippery brat, humph." Empress Dowager Zhou glared at her son. She waited for a while, but the girls still did not answer. "How about this, you can answer one by one." Empress Dowager Zhou pointed at the closest girl and said, "Tell this widow, who will you save?" The girl was shocked, thinking that Empress Dowager Zhou was pointing at someone else. She looked around and found that Empress Dowager Zhou was pointing at her, instantly wanting to cry. She never would have thought that Empress Dowager Zhou would choose her first to answer this difficult question. I. The girl bit her lips until they turned white, not being able to answer for a while. Su Jin couldn't help looking at her with a sympathetic gaze. I'll save the Empress Dowager." The girl suddenly noticed that Empress Dowager Zhou's face had sunk, revealing a look of displeasure as she replied. "Oh, you want to save this widow? Then are you going to watch the emperor drown to death?" Empress Dowager Zhou leaned back into the chair and placed the cup on the table, seriously looking at the girl. "Empress Dowager to die?" the young girl blurted out. She had already seen Imo Chuan's handsome face and her heart was beating fast. If she could marry him and become the empress, how could she bear to let him drown? I'll save the emperor. Save the emperor. Empress Dowager Zhou nodded. She didn't deny it and said, "All right, it's been hard on you." It was clearly the Empress Dowager who was choosing the Empress for the Emperor, but she chose to save the Emperor instead of the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager must hate her to death, so how could she still choose her as the Empress? Chapter 867. The next girls saw Empress Dowager Zhou look at her and immediately replied, "I'll save both of them. I know how to swim, so I can save one with one hand." After she said this, she thought she had learned from her mistake and was trying to please both sides. Who would have thought that Empress Dowager Zhou would slowly shake her head? "This widow has already said that you can only save one, this answer is not good." Next. Her eyes went past that girl and turned to the next one. The girl's face turned red, then white, then green, then black. She almost cried on the spot. When the other girls saw this, they all secretly said, "Serves you right." With this girl's lesson, they no longer dared to try tricks and could only honestly choose one to answer. If it wasn't to save the emperor, then it was to save the Empress Dowager. In the end, there were only 2 answers. Every time the girls answered who to save, Empress Dowager Zhou would ask, "The reason?" Reason? It was already not easy for these girls to make such a difficult choice. How could they think of a reason? But since the Empress Dowager asked, they couldn't not answer. They could only think of all sorts of reasons. Empress Dowager Zhou listened to them one by one. The girls' answers were either trying to please her or trying to flatter her. The more she listened, the more boring it became. Her heart was filled with disappointment. Next. She was already a bit disheartened and drowsy. She used her hand to support her forehead as she leaned back in the chair and slightly closed her eyes. A clear and melodious voice rang out. I choose to save the Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhou had already heard this answer so many times. She closed her eyes and continued to ask, the reason. There is only one reason, because the Empress Dowager is the Emperor's mother and the Emperor rules the country with filial piety. If I was the Empress, I would have to teach the Empress Dowager. I can't let the Emperor be condemned by everyone and become a disloyal and unfilial person. This unexpected answer made Empress Dowager Zhou open her eyes. She found that the one answering the question was the green-clothed girl. Then you saved this widow and the Emperor is about to drown. As the Empress, are you just going to watch your husband die? Empress Dowager Zhou followed up with a question. Husband and wife are one. If he dies, how can I live alone? So I will choose to save the Empress Dowager and then die with the Emperor. The green-clothed girl replied without any hesitation. Empress Dowager Zhou's back unknowingly straightened. She stared right at the girl and found that the other side's eyes were as clear as a spring, without any impurities at all. Although her voice was clear and soft, her tone was firm and her expression was serious. Her words came from her heart. Interesting, this girl's answer was interesting. Empress Dowager Zhou's heart was filled with satisfaction. She looked at Imo Chuan from the corner of her eyes and found that Imo Chuan did not even look at the green-clothed girl. He was just aimlessly looking around, as if the surrounding scenery was more beautiful than these beautiful girls. Empress Dowager Zhou knew that her son's heart was not with the green-clothed girl. She sighed slightly. She didn't blame her son. After all, this girl was so ugly and she was a cripple. It would be strange if her son liked her. Especially the girl his son liked before. She was fresh and lively like a lotus flower on a snowy mountain, pure and refined. All the girls in front of him added up couldn't compare to her beauty. Chapter 868. But how could one judge a person's beauty by their appearance? Empress Dowager Zhou was already beginning to like this green-clothed girl from the bottom of her heart. She originally felt pity for this green-clothed girl, but now it was a deep appreciation and love. Looking at the birthmark on this girl's face, she didn't think it was ugly at all. Rather, it was a unique mark of this girl. But what use was there in liking her? The Emperor didn't like it. Empress Dowager Zhou resisted the urge to ask for the girl's name. She waved her hand and said, next. The girl's answers were all clichés, nothing new at all. There was not a single person's answer like the green-clothed girl's that could make Empress Dowager Zhou's eyes light up. Although there were other girls that gave the same answer as the green-clothed girl, in Empress Dowager Zhou's ears, they were all picking up other people's words. There was no creativity in them and they weren't worth mentioning. When the girls all answered, they all looked at Empress Dowager Zhou with eyes filled with anticipation, waiting for her to announce the result. Empress Dowager Zhou rubbed her forehead, feeling very awkward in her heart. She liked the green-clothed girl the most, but the Emperor had no interest in her. He had already chosen the green-clothed girl's couplet for the first question, so if she chose the green-clothed girl for the second question, she would definitely become the Empress. Empress Dowager Zhou's heart had already loosened. Even if she wasn't beautiful and had a disability, this girl was smart and had a pure heart. If she became the Empress in the future, she would definitely be a good wife to her son. Her character, talent, and character were enough for her to become the mother of the world. Emperor, which of these girls' answers are you most satisfied with? Empress Dowager Zhou thought about it and gave the choice of this question to her son. Mo Chuan said with an expressionless face, all of their answers are the same and your son can't remember all of them, but there was one person's answer that your son remembers. Oh, which answer is it? Empress Dowager Zhou asked. There was someone who said that she wanted to save Mother, but chose to die with your son. Mother, your son wants to know which girl said this. She really is bold. Mo Chuan's eyes suddenly flashed with a sharp glow and his voice became a bit louder. This is bad, the emperor is angry. The young girls immediately panicked, but they weren't afraid. Instead, they had a sense of schadenfreude. This was because the emperor's target of anger wasn't them, but the green-clothed girl. Empress Dowager Zhou's heart sank. When she wanted to say a few words for the green-clothed girl, she saw the green-clothed girl take a step forward and say in a clear voice, I said it. It's you. Mo Chuan's eyes slightly narrowed as he looked at the girl like a cold arrow. The girl standing beside the green-clothed girl felt a chill and they couldn't help shivering. Only the green-clothed girl straightened her neck. Her expression was neither servile nor overbearing, not panicking at all, as if she did not feel Mo Chuan's anger at all. Su Jin couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat for this girl. She secretly looked at Empress Dowager Zhou, telling her to ask for mercy for this girl. Emperor, this widow feels that. As soon as Empress Dowager Zhou spoke, she was interrupted by Mo Chuan. Mother, your son thinks she spoke very well. Very well, very well. Mo Chuan said word for word. You could almost hear the sound of his teeth grinding. Although he said yes, everyone understood what he meant. Chapter 869. The girls' hearts were filled with joy. If they weren't in front of Empress Dowager Zhou and the Emperor, they wouldn't have been able to hold back their laughter. Their complacent eyes glanced at the green-clothed girl. Humph, ugly monster, you're so ugly, yet you still want to cause trouble. I'll let you show off. You wanted to flatter the Empress Dowager, but you ended up slapping the Emperor's horse hooves. Have you angered the Emperor? The Emperor already remembers you, let's see what good fruit you have left. If you want to be the Empress, try in your next life. Cool. Empress Dowager Zhou gave a few coughs and pulled back her son's hateful gaze that was looking at the green-clothed girl. Mother, this pavilion is very windy, be careful not to catch a cold. How about your son send you back to your palace to rest? Mo Chuan thoughtfully asked Empress Dowager Zhou. Empress Dowager Zhou's heart felt warm. This widow is fine. Emperor, this widow has already asked 2 questions, so I'll leave the last one to you. Do you have anything you want to ask these girls? Mother, your son's question is not important, Mother's body is the most important. You've been tired all day, so you should rest. Empress Dowager Zhou understood that her son wanted to find an excuse to escape, so how could she allow this? This widow says it's fine, so it's fine. Emperor, no matter what, this widow will choose an empress for you today. If you don't ask, then this widow will directly choose one for you. Mo Chuan's face slightly changed and he gave a helpless sigh. Alright, your son does have a problem that I can't solve. Oh, what problem? Say it, perhaps these girls will have a good solution. Empress Dowager Zhou said in a concerned voice. It's like this. Mother should have heard of it. Every year, there is a flood in the Guangnan area, followed by a drought in the autumn. Because of these 2 disasters, the people in the Guangnan area have no harvest all year round. Their lives are very difficult. Every year, your son allocates a large amount of money and grain to the Guangnan area, but this is not the fundamental solution to the problem. Your son has always been thinking, is there a good way to solve the flood and drought in the Guangnan area, so that the people can live a self-sufficient and well-fed life? This problem has troubled your son for a long time, but I still can't think of a solution. Even the ministers of the court are helpless. If there is someone here that can solve this problem for your son is willing to marry her and make her the Empress. I won't go back on my word. When the young girls heard this, their hearts, which had already been in despair, began to beat vigorously. Judging from the Emperor's words, the first 2 questions did not count. As long as she answered the last question correctly, the position of Empress would be hers. Their faces all turned red with excitement and their eyes sparkled. However, when they thought of the difficult problem that the Emperor had raised, their shining eyes couldn't help but dim, and the blush on their faces also disappeared. This was even harder to answer than the Empress Dowager's second question. Because they didn't know at all. Because they didn't know. Flood and drought. To have and to with. With him. With Dowd, he to him to. To. Chapter 870. Although these girls could be considered talented women, they usually only read poems and poems about romance, and what they wrote were also some sad works. Even the commoner girls didn't do any chores and had never truly experienced the sufferings of the common people. He wanted them to think of a way to solve the drought that even the ministers of the court couldn't solve. This was simply an idiot's dream. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help shaking her head with a sigh. She felt that her son's idea was too whimsical and it was too hard on these girls. If they had a good idea, why would the court need to support these ministers? She thought about it and instantly became angry. Why did the emperor give them a problem that no one could solve? It was clear that he didn't want an empress. This stinky brat, he actually dared to play tricks with her at this time. Empress Dowager Zhou's face instantly sunk. Emperor, what do you mean by this? Could it be that if the Guannan area's drought isn't solved, you won't get married for another day? Your son doesn't mean this. Then what do you mean? Empress Dowager Zhou angrily interrupted Imo Chuan and said in a sharp voice, even the ministers of the court can't solve this problem, yet you're counting on these girls to solve it. They are all girls, they are not scholars or officials. For this kind of country's flood and drought, you should be asking those officials who are receiving their salaries, not these weak girls. When the girls heard this, their eyes filled with respect and worship as they looked at Empress Dowager Zhou. A sense of closeness and gratitude filled their hearts. The Empress Dowager was truly good, these words were exactly what they wanted to say. Mother, could it be that you've forgotten something? The rise and fall of a country is everyone's responsibility. Officials are people, women are also people. What is called talent? What is called virtue? Not knowing how to compose a few poems and recite a few songs is called being talented and virtuous. Your son wants to marry an empress of a country, she needs to understand the suffering of the people, share the burden of the ruler, and share the same ideals as your son. Your son doesn't want to marry a pretty vase in the palace, not a canary that can only sing in a cage. Mother, your son's meaning, do you understand? Mo Chuan spoke in a forceful voice. Each word was like a hammer hitting Empress Dowager Zhou's chest. She looked at Mo Chuan in a daze, looking at him with a completely new gaze, like she was seeing him for the first time. As she stared at it, she felt her eyes warm up, and a warm current rushed up to her head. Her son had finally grown up. He had his own thoughts, his own understanding, and his own ability to discern things. She could finally hand over the heavy burden on her shoulders to him. Emperor, I understand what you mean. Empress Mother will definitely help you choose a satisfactory girl to be your empress. Empress Dowager Zhou reached out and grabbed her son's right hand, giving him a confident smile. Mo Chuan's words made the faces of the young girls turn red. They lowered their heads, wishing there was a crack in the ground for them to hide in. Even the arrogant Xia Yuyan, who looked down on the other girls, was ashamed. She truly believed that her poems were good and that she had the reputation of being the most talented girl in the capital. Many young masters who admired her reputation came to ask her for advice and to ask for her hand in marriage. They had almost trampled over the threshold of her house, and it had also fostered her arrogant and conceited personality. Chapter 871. Mo Chuan did not call out names and did not point at Xia Yuyan's nose to scold her, but she felt her face burning like someone had whipped her, making her feel ashamed. She reflected on herself. Even if she didn't read 10,000 books, she had read at least 8,000, but they were all poems. As for other books, she didn't even bother to look at them. Like the flood and drought that the emperor had mentioned, as well as the people's bitter lives, she had read about them in poems before. She had never read them in detail, not understanding them at all. She had always thought that she was talented, and that even the poems of those learned scholars could not compare to her. Now she knew that she was just a frog at the bottom of a well. She still had too many things to learn. She could not be called a talented girl just because she knew a few poems. With her talent, she was not worthy of being a country's empress. There were quite a few girls like Xia Yuyan who realized their own shortcomings. They all silently retreated at the same time. Like this, there was one person that stood out. That green-clothed girl was in deep thought, not noticing that the girls beside her were all quietly retreating. She was standing in front of everyone by herself, looking very strange. Oh, for this girl to step forward, could it be that you've thought of a good method? Empress Dowager Zhou's eyes swept over and fell onto the green-clothed girl's face. Her eyes were filled with eagerness. This was because she could see that the other girls had already retreated and only this green-clothed girl was thinking. Reporting to the Empress Dowager, this little girl has indeed thought of a few methods, but I don't know if they will be useful. The green-clothed girl looked up. She did not look at Mo Chuan, but rather at Empress Dowager Zhou. Let's hear it. Empress Dowager Zhou's eyes lit up. The girls behind the green-clothed girl all took in a cold breath. They looked at the girl's back with eyes filled with disbelief, their hearts filled with dissatisfaction. Humph, you only know how to brag. We can't think of a single method with all of us here, but you can think of several methods by yourself. Who are you trying to trick? Just wait for the Emperor and the Empress Dowager to see through your lies and ruthlessly punish you for your crimes. The green-clothed girl calmly said, "The Wei River is our West Chu's largest river. It runs through the entire Guannan area and is the main source of water and irrigation for the local people. Many people call the Wei River the Mother River, but this Mother River has a large hidden danger. It will burst its banks almost every year, and as long as the Wei River bursts its banks, the surrounding 100 miles of villages and commoners will suffer a disaster. So to solve the Guannan flood, we first have to control the Wei River. Once we solve the problem of the Mother River bursting its banks every year, the flood will naturally be solved." She said it in a clear manner. Even Su and the other girls who only knew how to recite poems could understand. So this was how the flood was. Everyone looked at the green-clothed girl with admiration in their eyes. Chapter 872. Everyone could hear that the Emperor's tone was not kind and had a questioning tone to it. He clearly looked down on this green-clothed girl, so he scoffed at her words, picking bones out of an egg. Actually, everyone understood that as a girl, it wasn't easy for her to say something like that. For these girls, they had never even heard of the Wei River or the Mother River before. But the Emperor didn't like it. The girls were happy in their hearts, but this angered Empress Dowager Zhou. "Emperor, this girl has already said that she has several methods, but she hasn't said a single one yet. Why are you in such a rush?" She glared at Mo Chuan. "Alright, then this minister will listen to this girl's good methods." Mo Chuan curled his lips and said in a voice filled with sarcasm. Empress Dowager Zhou was even angrier. She could see that her son thought this girl was ugly, so he was making things difficult for her. But no matter how ugly she was, she couldn't compare to this girl's talent. This girl, don't worry and speak boldly. Even if you are wrong, this widow will help you. Empress Dowager Zhou turned to look at the green-clothed girl. She was already feeling a bit angry with her son. She liked this girl, but her son didn't like her. She wanted her son to open his eyes and see what a virtuous and talented girl was like. She couldn't sit on the Empress throne just because she had a face that could cause the downfall of a country. Facing the Emperor's ridicule and Empress Dowager Zhou's affirmation, the green-clothed girl's expression did not change at all. She still had an indifferent look. I asked the Emperor, what method did the officials you sent to control the river use to control the Wei River? Did they all use methods to strengthen and raise the dam? Humph. What answered her was a cold snort from Imo Chuan. The green-clothed girl nodded and said, only knowing how to block it and not know how to control it, that's just treating the symptoms and not the root cause. No wonder the Wei River bursts its dam every year, becoming worse and worse. Imo Chuan said with a cold smile, your meaning is that the officials this one sent to control the river don't even know how to control the river as well as a little girl like you? Then how about this one sends you to control the river? As long as the Emperor gives the order, this little girl is willing to go. The green-clothed girl replied without any hesitation. The two of them asking and answering each other were like needles against each other, their words filled with the smell of gunpowder. The green-clothed girl was not respectful to Imo Chuan just because he was the Emperor. Her attitude was neither humble nor arrogant. Although her voice was gentle, she did not take half a step back. All the young girls were stupefied as they listened. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes and heard it with their own ears, they wouldn't have thought that there would be such a bold girl in this world. She actually dared to argue with the Emperor. If this girl wasn't a lunatic, then she was a fool. Empress Dowager Zhou and Su Jin looked at each other, seeing the praise in each other's eyes. Your Majesty, are you really going to order her, a girl, to go and manage the river? Empress Dowager Zhou was already completely convinced by the green-clothed girl. Just based on her boldness, not easily lowering her head in front of the Emperor and knowing how to argue, she would support this girl to the end. She was afraid that the Emperor would issue a decree in a fit of anger. Wouldn't that be harming the young lady? Imo Chuan gave a snort and said, does mother think your son is someone who doesn't know what is important? She's just a little girl. How could she know how to control the river? His expression and tone were filled with contempt. Chapter 873. The green-clothed girl revealed a faint smile and calmly said, the reason why the Wei River bursts every year is because there is more and more silt in the river and the river becomes narrower and narrower. Even if the dam is strengthened, it can't keep up with the speed of silting up the river. If we trace the source, we should start from the source of the Wei River. Start from the source. How? Imo Chuan still did not look at her. She raised a finger and counted, the Wei River's source is west of the Guannan River. That place is sandy soil and the silt has been lost, so to cure the Wei River's flood, the first step is to plant large amounts of trees at the source of the Wei River. The tree roots have the effect of stabilizing the soil and reducing the silt loss, so it will greatly reduce the silting up of the river. The second step is to build a reservoir at the upstream of the Wei River and use a dam to block the water. Then during the dry season, the people on both sides of the Wei River won't die from a lack of water. This is killing two birds with one stone. The third step is to clear the silt in the river and dig a deeper river. As long as these three steps are done, I believe that solving the Wei River's flood and the Guannan River's drought will not be a difficult matter. Not a difficult matter. Everyone couldn't help sucking in a breath through their teeth as they stared at her with wide eyes. They could not understand where this young girl's confidence came from. Even the Emperor and the ministers of the court were helpless against this problem, but when it came from her mouth, it actually became easy. Seeing the green-clothed girl speak with bright eyes, it was as if she had a card up her sleeve. But this was a flood and drought that had plagued the Guan River's citizens for decades. How could it be solved so easily? Even Empress Dowager Zhou was a bit uncertain like this. She didn't know a single thing about river management. Hearing the green-clothed girl's words that she didn't understand, like sandy soil, silt loss, and what reservoir? What was this reservoir? Empress Dowager Zhou was filled with doubts, but she didn't show it on her face at all. Instead, she turned to look at Imo Chuan with a faint smile. Emperor, do you think this girl's method will be useful? How are they compared to those learned scholars in the imperial court? Imo Chuan's chin tightened as his dark eyes stared at the green-clothed girl's face. This was the first time he was looking at this girl. Hearing Empress Dowager Zhou's words, his expression was a bit unnatural as he turned around and casually said, "It's just paper strategizing. This little girl doesn't have any experience, treating this flood and drought like child's play. If it was this easy to solve, then wouldn't the ministers in this one's court be freeloaders? Year by year, there will be floods every year. Aren't they all?" Empress Dowager Zhou was filled with anger as she said this. Imo Chuan was instantly speechless. He looked at Empress Dowager Zhou. "Mother, what do you mean? Do you really want me to send this lass to control the river?" Chapter 874. Empress Dowager Zhou waved her hand at the green-clothed girl. "Miss, come here." The green-clothed girl limped forward and bowed to Empress Dowager Zhou and Imo Chuan. "Greetings to the Empress Dowager and greetings to the Emperor." "Good child, no need to be so polite." Empress Dowager Zhou looked at her in a pleasant manner. She noticed that when the green-clothed girl walked over, Imo Chuan's eyes were staring at her, but she did not hide her limp foot. She did not reveal an expression of unease or shame because of her flaw. She had a natural and dignified demeanor. She knew that Empress Dowager Zhou was looking at her, so she slightly looked down and did not look at Empress Dowager Zhou. This was the most basic etiquette for a junior meeting an elder. This girl did very well. But being closer, Empress Dowager Zhou could clearly see the birthmark on this girl's face. This large purple-red mark covered most of her face. The bridge of her nose, her eyebrows, her eyes, and her entire left cheek were all covered, making her feel even more shocked. Even with Empress Dowager Zhou's experience, seeing this kind of terrifying birthmark still made her eyes uncomfortable, so she quickly looked away. But she noticed that the skin next to this girl's birthmark was very smooth, just like a piece of fine jade. Her facial features were very good, especially her eyes. They were clear and bright, just like spring water. Empress Dowager Zhou could say that if this girl didn't have this palm-sized birthmark on her face, she would be a country-destroying beauty. A pity, truly a pity. But the pity in Empress Dowager Zhou's heart quickly disappeared. The heavens would never be too fair to a person. It gave this girl talent and knowledge, giving her courage and calmness that was different from normal people, so it had to take something from her as compensation. So not only did the heavens take away this girl's beauty, it also crippled her leg. But none of this was important. Because the more the heavens took away, the more it gave to this girl. Empress Dowager Zhou believed that in the depths of this girl's heart, there were many virtues and knowledge that she had not discovered yet. She stared at the green-clothed girl without blinking. It was like finding an incomparably dazzling pearl in a pile of rubble. Her eyes were filled with pleasant surprise and admiration. She also found that other than the birthmark on this girl's face, her face was very red. Her skin was white, her lips were red, and her teeth were white, giving off a healthy glow. She was completely different from those pale-faced and weak girls in the boudoir. Her entire body was filled with sunshine and vitality. After she and the emperor were married, she would definitely be able to give birth to a healthy, white, and chubby imperial grandson for him. Empress Dowager Zhou thought about it and her heart bloomed with joy. Empress Dowager Zhou's Dowager Yu. It was as if she could already see a white and chubby baby in her arms, waving his chubby little hands and scratching at her face. Royal Mother, Royal Mother. Dowd. And, she. And. Emperor, why did you call your royal mother? Empress Dowager Zhou looked at her son with a smile. That slightly narrowed eyes made Su Jin's back go numb. Chapter 875. Su Jin looked at Mo Chuan with a sympathetic gaze. She had already noticed that Empress Dowager Zhou liked this green-clothed girl. She couldn't help muttering in her heart, the Empress Dowager wouldn't have chosen this lame girl as the Emperor's Empress, right? How could the Emperor agree? The difference between this young lady and the young lady that the Emperor liked was more than 108,000 miles. Mother, your son suddenly remembered that there are still political matters to take care of, so your son wants to leave first. After taking care of these matters, I'll come see Mother. Mo Chuan seemed to have noticed Empress Dowager Zhou's intentions and couldn't wait to leave. How could Empress Dowager Zhou let him go? She smiled and patted the back of Mo Chuan's hand. Sit, there is nothing more important than choosing your Empress. Moreover, we are currently discussing the happiness of the tens of thousands of citizens in the Guannan region. Curing the way rivers flood and drought, allowing the citizens to live in peace, isn't this the most important political matter? Mo Chuan couldn't answer her question and could only sit back down. He turned his eyes away and didn't look at the green-clothed girl in front of him, like she wasn't even in his eyes. Empress Dowager Zhou didn't care as she looked at the green-clothed girl with a smile. You just said there were 3 methods to cure the flood, but it was a bit too general. Do you have a more detailed plan? The girl nodded. What I just said was the basic method. I can write a detailed plan on how to implement it, but as for how to implement it, it depends on the situation and can't be decided at once. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't understand her new words, but this did not affect her trust in this girl. Emperor, this widow has always taught you to not be ashamed to ask questions. If you meet a teacher more knowledgeable than you, you should humbly ask for advice. Now that this girl has a good method to cure the river, why are you indifferent and not saying a word? She reprimanded Mo Chuan in a deep voice. Mo Chuan looked up in surprise. Mother, you want your son to ask her for advice? You want to ask a little girl that hasn't even grown her hair yet? How presumptuous! Emperor, are these the words of a country's ruler? Ambition does not depend on age. Although this girl is young, she knows more things than you and me. You're this arrogant, judging people by their appearance, how can you achieve anything? Empress Dowager Zhou's face sunk and she suddenly slapped the table. Your son doesn't dare. Mo Chuan stood up in fear. Doesn't dare. This widow sees that your courage is becoming bigger and bigger, there is nothing you don't dare to do. Empress Dowager Zhou gave a cold laugh. This widow sees that your courage is not important, the most important thing is whether her method works or not. It's not important whether I believe her or not. What's important is whether her method works. Emperor, if you really love your people like your own children, why don't you be ashamed to ask this young lady for advice on how to control the river? If her method can really cure the flood, the ones who will benefit are the tens of thousands of our West Chu citizens. Your son understands. Mo Chuan revealed an ashamed expression as he deeply bowed to Empress Dowager Zhou. The person you should be asking is not this widow, but rather this girl. Empress Dowager Zhou gave a snort. Mo Chuan was silent for a while before finally looking up. He looked at the green-clothed girl and barely spoke. Miss, do you have any strategies for controlling the river? We would like to consult you. Chapter 876. The green-clothed girl did not decline and walked in front of the table on the side. Using her finger as a pen, she began to write on the paper. Not long after, she had already written a large piece of text. She cleaned her hands and handed the finished article over to Emo Chuan. These are the measures this little girl can think of. How to dig the river, how to build the dam, how to open the canal, how to maintain the soil, but it's still the same, it has to be adapted to the local conditions. As for how to implement it, I'll have to ask an experienced river official to consider it. There was no pride on her face at all, rather she was very humble. She did not say that the method she thought of would work, which made Empress Dowager Zhou have a better impression of her. Emo Chuan finished reading it without saying a word. He held the thin piece of paper in his hand, but he did not throw it to the side after reading it. Although he did not say anything, Empress Dowager Zhou already had an idea in her heart when she saw this. Emperor, do you think this girl's method will work? This widow wants to hear the truth. She asked without relaxing. Mo Chuan was silent for a bit. Perhaps it will work, but I don't know. His answer was very ambiguous. This widow understands your meaning. Since it's like this, does the emperor remember the promise you made before? If anyone can come up with a way to solve the flood of the Wei River and the drought of the Guannan region, you will marry her and make her your empress. Now that this girl has solved your problem, it's time for you to keep your promise. Empress Dowager Zhou's eyes sparkled as she stared at Emo Chuan. What? The Empress Dowager really wanted to choose this ugly cripple as her empress. The jaws of the girls present all hit the floor in shock, revealing looks of disbelief. They couldn't help glaring at the green-clothed girl with jealousy and hatred. Their burning gazes almost burned the green-clothed girl's back. What was so good about that girl? Ugly and crippled, could the Empress Dowager have gone senile? But even if the Empress Dowager was senile, the Emperor was not. They could all see that the Emperor had a look of unwillingness on his face. Originally, with how handsome the Emperor was, how could he like this ugly monster? The girls all looked at Emo Chuan with expectant eyes. Emo Chuan's eyes fell on the green-clothed girl's face for a bit before moving away. He was silent, not agreeing or disagreeing. Even Empress Dowager Zhou did not know what he meant. She had prepared a stomach full of words, waiting for Emo Chuan to reject or to scold him, but she never thought that he would not say a word, making her unable to explode. Do you agree or not? Do you agree or not? Give a straightforward answer. Emo Chuan looked at her and slowly said, Mother, are you sure? Emo Chuan looked at her and slowly said, Mother, are you sure that she is the empress you chose for your son? That's right. Empress Dowager Zhou said in a firm voice. Emo Chuan looked at the green-clothed girl from the corner of his eyes. Not only is she ugly, she's also a cripple. You really don't mind? She doesn't mind. She doesn't come from an influential family, she is just a commoner girl. Emo Chuan added. Empress Dowager Zhou blurted out in an uncaring voice, so what if she's a civilian girl? This young lady is virtuous and talented. She's much better than those young ladies from aristocratic families. Chapter 877. But none of them could refute this because what Empress Dowager Zhou said was the truth. Empress Dowager Zhou and the Emperor had given 3 tests today, but they could not give a satisfactory answer no matter which one. They were suppressed by this green-clothed girl that came out of nowhere. Apart from his appearance and legs, which part of him could compare to the other party? Knowledge, speech, demeanor, and manners. These were all things that the daughters of large families were proud of. The green-clothed girl was not inferior to them at all. The young girls were like defeated roosters. They lowered their heads, completely convinced of their loss. Emperor, do you remember what you said when you came to find this widow? You said that marrying a wife should be virtuous and that you didn't care about the girl's appearance. What, now that you see that this girl is not beautiful, you're going back on your words? Could it be that you're like those ordinary people, judging people by their appearance? Empress Dowager Zhou stared at Mo Chuan and spoke in a strict voice. Mo Chuan shook his head and said, "Of course not." "Since it's not, then you've agreed." Empress Dowager Zhou aggressively said. "Mother, your son." Mo Chuan still had an awkward look on his face. Su Jin and the young girls couldn't help sympathizing with him. The Empress Dowager is too unreasonable, actually forcing the Emperor's son to marry such an ugly girl as his Empress. How could the Emperor see her every day and sleep in the same bed with her? She was afraid that when the Emperor saw her ugly face, he couldn't help but want to vomit. "Are you going to marry or not?" Empress Dowager Zhou coldly said. Her tone and expression were already filled with impatience. If Mo Chuan dilly-dallied with her, she would slap him and wake his muddle-headed head. "Marry? What did you say?" Empress Dowager Zhou didn't hear it clearly and shook her ears. "Your son is saying that since she is the girl mother has chosen for your son, then your son will follow mother's wishes and marry her as my wife, making her my Empress." Mo Chuan said word for word. His voice was filled with power. He looked right at Empress Dowager Zhou. "Your son agrees to marry her, but mother, you better think this through. If your son marries her, I will never marry a second girl in my life. After your son marries, you can't force your son to marry a concubine. Your son's harem will only have her. Can Imperial Mother agree to this condition?" Empress Dowager Zhou was stunned. Only marry a single woman. This was not her original intention. Her original intention was to find a virtuous and dignified girl to be her son's Empress. Her appearance was not important. If her son was not satisfied with her appearance, she would have a reason to give her son more concubines. At that time, her son would definitely not refuse. But hearing her son's words, he was determined to only marry one. What should she do now? Empress Dowager Zhou wanted her son to spread the leaves for the royal family and have many descendants. How was marrying a single girl enough? "Fine, I promise you. However, I also have a condition. If she doesn't give birth to a grandchild within 3 years, you must promise me that you will remarry another concubine." Empress Dowager Zhou was old and she immediately thought of a condition. Mo Chuan couldn't help being angry. "Mother, your son wants to marry an empress, not a sow. Even if she doesn't marry a son, your son won't. If Empress Mother does not agree, then this subject will never marry." Chapter 878. Empress Dowager, please calm your anger, calm your anger. Su Jin quickly came forward to pat Empress Dowager Zhou's back and whispered in her ear, "Empress Dowager, why don't you agree to the Emperor first? This servant feels that this girl is a sensible person. When she and the Emperor are married, even if the Emperor doesn't want to marry someone else, the Empress Dowager can talk to that girl and have her persuade the Emperor. This kind of matter can't be rushed. If she and the Emperor are married and give birth to a white and fat little royal grandson in the 2nd year, wouldn't you be worrying for nothing?" When Empress Dowager Zhou heard this, she felt that it was too reasonable. She really was thinking too much. All right, this widow agrees to you. But Emperor, this is what you said, so don't regret it. Empress Dowager Zhou was afraid the Emperor would go back on his word. Your son will not regret it. I just hope that mother will not regret it. Mo Chuan looked at Empress Dowager Zhou and spoke in a deep voice. Empress Dowager Zhou said with a smile, This is the girl this widow personally chose. How could this widow regret it? This is for the best. After Mo Chuan said this, he suddenly stood up and walked in front of the green-clothed girl. Before anyone could react, he had already picked up the green-clothed girl and walked out of the Happy Heart Pavilion with large steps. Ah! The people present couldn't help letting out shocked cries. Empress Dowager Zhou also stood up and shouted in a surprised voice, "Emperor, stop. What are you doing?" Mo Chuan stopped and turned around. His lips curled into a smile of ridicule, but it was unknown if he was ridiculing himself or Empress Dowager Zhou. "She is the Empress mother has chosen for your son and your son has agreed to marry her. She is your son's woman, so of course your son will bring his woman away. Is there anything wrong with this? You're too impatient. You haven't married yet." Empress Dowager Zhou looked at him with a look of disbelief. "We haven't married yet, but we can do it as soon as possible. Your son doesn't want to wait any longer. 3 days from now, it will be an auspicious day. Everything will be auspicious. Your son will bow to the heaven and earth with her on that day. As for the wedding, I hope that Imperial Mother will work hard for this son. This son thanks Imperial Mother." Mo Chuan held the green-clothed girl and gave a slight bow to Empress Dowager Zhou. Then he turned around and left the royal garden with large steps. His bright yellow figure quickly disappeared from everyone's eyes. Empress Dowager Zhou was stunned. Everyone present was stunned as well. The emperor's actions were completely out of everyone's expectations. It was simply inconceivable. The young girls were extremely disappointed, and a few of them could not help but sob. They had entered the palace with dreams in their hearts, but they did not expect that in the end, it would all be for naught. The emperor did not even look at them once, and the throne of the empress had actually fallen onto the head of an ugly and crippled girl. When they returned, how would they explain this to their parents? They couldn't even compare to an ugly and crippled girl. The cries of the young girls made Empress Dowager Zhou feel annoyed. She rubbed her forehead, feeling her temples ache. She wasn't worried about the crying girls, but about her troublesome son. What she was worried about now was that after her son took the girl away, he would do something unimaginable. If he angered the girl, then this marriage was very likely to be called off. Chapter 879. Empress Dowager Zhou's mind was in chaos and her heart was in chaos. The more she thought about it, the more she felt it was possible. Su Jin was stunned by Empress Dowager Zhou's question. Her face turned hot and she said in a soft voice, "No, Empress Dowager, you're thinking too much. The emperor is not someone who doesn't know what's important. Didn't he say that he would marry in 3 days? In these 3 days, he should be able to endure it. That's hard to say. The emperor is not young, Empress Dowager Zhou shook her head and swallowed the rest of the words she wanted to say. She had personally seen the emperor's passion for the Qin family's girl and her old face turned red seeing it. Forget it, let him do what he wants. If he cooks raw rice into cooked rice, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Empress Dowager Zhou said after thinking about it. Su Jin was secretly shocked as she whispered, "Empress Dowager, you really want the emperor to marry that girl to become the empress?" "That's right." Empress Dowager Zhou raised her brows and looked at Su Jin. "What do you think is wrong with that girl?" "It's not that she's wrong. That girl's talent and character are both very good, it's just that her face. And her legs." Su Jin said in a hesitant voice. "That's not important, what this widow values is her talent and character. Also, this widow believes that after she marries the emperor, she will quickly give this widow a healthy grandson." Empress Dowager Zhou suddenly thought of something. "That's right, Su Jin, what is that girl's surname and name? Which family does she belong to?" This widow didn't even have time to ask before the emperor took her away. "That child really is." She kept shaking her head as she spoke. Su Jin suddenly slapped her forehead. This servant actually forgot to ask what the future empress name is. "Empress Dowager, please wait a moment, this servant will immediately ask around." When she was prepared to leave, she suddenly saw the 20 or so girls standing in the pavilion. Empress Dowager, these girls. Empress Dowager Zhou instantly came to her senses and ordered, "Someone, bring the gifts prepared by this widow to these girls." The eunuchs on the side placed the prepared gifts into the hands of the girls. "Many thanks for the Empress Dowager's gift." The girls all bowed down and their hearts felt much better. Even if they couldn't become the Empress Dowager's gifts were rare treasures of the palace. It was enough to bring glory to the sect if they were brought home. Su Jin sent the girls out of the palace one by one before sending people to inquire about the green-clothed girl who was taken away by the emperor. Su Jin sent the girls out one by one before she sent someone to inquire about the green-clothed girl's identity. But strangely, no matter how she investigated, she couldn't find out the name, background of this green-clothed girl. For this garden party, Empress Dowager Zhou had invited a total of 57 girls into the palace. Among them, there were 28 girls from large families and 29 girls from commoners. However, this green-clothed girl was not in the list of 29 girls. Su what? She yang, su she yang down sir, she was, she and, she, is, he, after, Dowager Zhou, after, Dowager Zhou, she, he, and, he. There were a total of 57 people that entered the palace that day and another 57 were sent out. Impossible, this is impossible. Chapter 880. Empress Dowager Zhou felt this was very strange. She closed her eyes and forcefully rubbed her forehead, but her mind was a mess. Su Jin's words kept ringing in her ears. There were 57 people entering the palace and 57 people leaving the palace. She muttered, "Why is there one more? Why is there one more? Who is this extra person? What is going on?" Su Jin's head was already turning into paste from thinking about it. She had a confused look on her face. This servant also thinks it's impossible, but the truth is like this. The girl that was taken away by the emperor really wasn't among the people you invited into the palace. The imperial palace is heavily guarded and it is absolutely impossible for outsiders to enter. Every time a lady enters the imperial palace, this servant has carefully checked their identities. But where did that lady come from? Could she be an assassin that snuck into the palace? Su Jin couldn't help shivering as she anxiously said, "Then wouldn't the emperor be in danger? This servant will go and report this to the emperor." Su Jin, stop. Empress Dowager Zhou suddenly stopped Su Jin. She suddenly stood up and because she stood up too suddenly, her head was dizzy and she swayed. Empress Dowager. Su Jin quickly supported her. She could feel that Empress Dowager Zhou's palms were covered in cold sweat and her body was trembling. Her heart was filled with worry as she turned to order, "Quickly go find Dr. Zhang." "No need. This widow is fine." Empress Dowager Zhou took a deep breath and focused her mind. She held Su Jin's hand and slowly sat back down in the chair, closing her eyes. This widow wants to think about it properly. Su Jin did not dare disturb Empress Dowager Zhou's thoughts. She waved her hand to let the servants in the pavilion leave. She silently stood by Empress Dowager Zhou's side, looking at her with a face of worry. Empress Dowager Zhou's heart was filled with a giant fear that she didn't dare think about. However, this problem was placed in front of her and she couldn't avoid it, so she had to think about it. This green-clothed girl, just who was she? She was clearly not one of the girls that he had invited into the palace. She was the one who was extra. Su Jin suspected that she was an assassin, but Empress Dowager Zhou was certain that this girl was not an assassin. She suddenly appeared in the royal garden. What goal did she have? Empress Dowager Zhou closed her eyes and thought back to the green-clothed girl's words and actions. Her words and actions were very natural, without any pretense at all. Regarding this, Empress Dowager Zhou believed in her eyes, she wouldn't see the wrong person. Could it be that she really came for the Empress position? If her goal was just this, Empress Dowager Zhou could endure it. Even if her background was unknown and she came from the countryside, Empress Dowager Zhou could ignore it, but she was afraid. Thinking about it now, she felt that the green-clothed girl was indescribably familiar, like they had met before. Jean! Impossible! Empress Dowager Zhou forcefully shook her head. How could she know that girl? Empress Dowager Zhou shook her. That was because the girl had a huge birthmark on her face, which was unforgettable to anyone who saw her. She also had a lame leg. But if you put aside the birthmark on her face, her lame foot, her posture, her way of talking, her natural and unrestrained manner, and her clear eyes without a trace of impurities. Chapter 881. Thinking of this, Empress Dowager Zhou suddenly opened her eyes and took in a cold breath. It can't be. It can't be her. It definitely can't be her. She grabbed Su Jin's hand like a drowning person grabbing a piece of driftwood. There was a trace of fear in her eyes. Su Jin, tell this widow, that green-clothed girl, doesn't she look like someone? Like who? Chen Ning. Empress Dowager Zhou slowly said word for word. Su Jin was shocked and immediately shook her head as she said, Empress Dowager, how could this be possible? This servant doesn't feel like it at all. Miss Chen is elegant and refined, but that green-clothed girl has an ugly birthmark on her face. She is also a cripple, the two of them don't look alike at all. If she didn't have a birthmark on her face, do you think she looks like it? Without a birthmark. Su Jin tried to recall the green-clothed girl's appearance. She realized that she didn't have a deep impression of her because the birthmark was too big. It covered most of the girl's face, and all she could think of was the birthmark. This servant doesn't remember that girl's appearance, I only remember her birthmark. She honestly replied. Empress Dowager Zhou's head was filled with dizziness again. She closed her eyes and opened them again, giving a cold laugh. She really is smart. Even this widow was tricked by her. She was standing in front of this widow like this, but this widow's eyes were like blind, I couldn't recognize her at all. Not simple, she really is not simple. Su Jin was confused and said in a confused voice, Empress Dowager, who are you saying is smart and not simple? Is it that green-clothed girl? Your meaning is, she is Miss Chen. Empress Dowager Zhou said word for word, it's her. Impossible, this is definitely impossible. Su Jin immediately shook her head. She looked at Empress Dowager Zhou with a look of disbelief, feeling that the Empress Dowager was hallucinating. Her heart filled with worry. She held Empress Dowager Zhou's arm and softly said, the wind is strong here, Empress Dowager, don't catch a cold. This servant will help you back to the palace to rest. This servant will investigate this green-clothed girl's background, I will definitely investigate it clearly. Investigate. Do we still need to investigate? She is Chen Ning, she is Chen Ning. Empress Dowager Zhou shouted. She tightly gripped Su Jin's hand and her body trembled. She was trembling in fear. Empress Dowager, let's go back to the palace first. It doesn't matter who she is. Chen Ning of Chen Ning's Dowager Chen's is, but she is Chen Fan. Empress Dowager, let's return to the palace first. It doesn't matter who that girl is. Nothing is more important than your body. Su Jin's voice was filled with tears. Su Jin, you don of this widow's Jin. You don't believe that she is Chen Ning, right? Empress Dowager Zhou suddenly turned around and glared at Su Jin. B. Su Dowager do not remember, B. Chin, B. Dowager. Jin did not. Don't you remember? Miss Chen left the capital city a few days ago and she went to marry Yi Qin. T.B. B. Of, Ning. Ning. Is. Her tears unknowingly fell. When she saw Chen Ning come out of the carriage that day, she couldn't help crying. Chapter 882. That bright red wedding dress was like thick blood, stabbing her eyes and stabbing her heart. She could never forget it. She knew that she would never see it again. Hearing Su Jin's words, Empress Dowager Zhou's dizzy mind became clear. She looked at Su Jin and muttered, "That's right, it can't be her. She has already married to Yi Qin and that Yi Qin crown prince is determined to get her. For her, he would rather give up a year of our West Chu's tribute, so how could he let her go? It can't be her, it can't be her." Her body had no strength and it was like it had been sucked out by someone. She could barely stand up with Su Jin's support. At this time, she suddenly felt her strength return. Her eyes lit up and she revealed a smile on her face. "Su Jin, you're right. This widow has always been suspicious and thinking too much. Perhaps it is because the day of the emperor's marriage has finally come and this widow is too happy, so this widow is worried and always thinks about the worst." Su Jin felt that Empress Dowager Zhou's cold palm had become warm again and her heart relaxed. She said with a smile, "The Empress Dowager is worried about your son. For the emperor's marriage, who knows how much you've worried about it. Now that the dust has finally settled, you should be thinking about happy things. No matter who that girl is, she was personally picked by the Empress Dowager, so her character is top-notch. Let's quickly think of a way to prepare for the emperor's wedding ceremony." Her words woke someone from a dream and Empress Dowager Zhou nodded in agreement. That's right, that's right. This widow feels that girl's character is outstanding and that girl from the Qin family is the same, so this widow feels that they are similar. Su Jin, are you sure they are not the same person? She was still a bit worried. This servant is sure, they are definitely not the same person. Miss Chen is already tens of thousands of miles away, she cannot be the future empress you chose. Su Jin said with a smile. Empress Dowager Zhou's heart finally fell back into her stomach. She said with a smile, "Then it must be your fault, missing the girl's name. This widow will punish you. This servant will accept the Empress Dowager's punishment." Su Jin quickly bowed down. For His Majesty's wedding, the etiquette cannot be sloppy. There are 6 etiquettes: asking for the name, accepting gifts, asking for the date, and welcoming the bride. Ijia will leave the asking for the name ceremony to you to handle. You must do it properly for Ijia and not make a single mistake, do you understand? This servant will obey. Su Jin respectfully replied. Empress Dowager Zhou thought about it and then said, "Immediately summon the Minister of Rites into the palace to see this widow. The emperor's marriage is not a small matter, this widow will personally tell him to make this marriage grand and solemn. Although it is rushed, it cannot lose the face of the royal family." "Yes, Empress Dowager." "Very good. Go and do what you need to do. I need to return to the palace to help the emperor's wedding plan and make it a grand affair." Empress Dowager Zhou had a smile on her face as she let go of Su Jin's hand and walked out of the pavilion. She didn't even use her cane, it was clear she was in a very good mood. Su Jin heard her muttering to herself, 3 days. After 3 days, the Emperor, 3 days, 1, Su, Si, and Su. Chapter 883. Su-jin had been by Empress Dowager Zhou's side for several decades, and this was the first time she had seen her this happy. The emperor's marriage was a large stone in the Empress Dowager's heart, and now that it had finally fallen, she couldn't help feeling happy for the Empress Dowager. She wiped her tears and first sent someone to inform the Minister of Rights to come to the Peaceful Life Palace. Then she went to investigate the green-clothed girl's name and background. This was because the green-clothed girl was the future empress, so her background had to be clear, otherwise how could she explain it to the people of the world? Su-jin's investigation was very careful this time. She carefully checked the invitation of every girl that entered the palace and sent people to each girl's home to ask. The result was that among the girls that entered the palace, there was not a single one with a birthmark or a lame leg. This answer was like a stick to her head, instantly stunning Su-jin. This green-clothed girl was really, like the Empress Dowager said, an extra. Su-jin took in a cold breath. She began to think back to what Empress Dowager Zhou had said, and the more she thought about it, the more afraid she became. In the end, she couldn't help suspecting that this green-clothed girl that appeared out of nowhere was really the Qin girl that married to East Qin, right? Once this thought arose, it would linger in her heart, making her feel uneasy. She thought about it and knew that there was only one person that could solve this mystery for her. Mo Chuan carried the green-clothed girl and left the royal garden with large steps, heading straight for his palace. Xiao Si, who was guarding the palace, was shocked when he saw the emperor carrying a green-clothed girl in his arms. When he saw the green-clothed girl's appearance, he was even more shocked. Why was this girl this ugly? Emperor! Guard here! Without this one's orders, no one is allowed to come in, otherwise this one will hold you accountable. When Xiao Si called out, Mo Chuan spoke without even turning his head. Yes, Emperor. Xiao Si immediately stopped walking. He stared in a daze as the emperor carried that frighteningly ugly girl into the bedroom and then slammed the door shut. The heavy slamming of the door seemed like it had hit him, making his body tremble. What was going on? Didn't the emperor go to choose the empress? Why did he suddenly come back carrying a girl? Who was that girl? It couldn't be the empress that the emperor chose this time, right? Xiao Si was covered in a cold sweat from his own guess, but he immediately shook his head in denial. No, definitely not. This girl was so ugly that people wouldn't want to look at her a second time. She wasn't even fit to be the emperor's foot-washing maid. It was even more impossible for the emperor to take a fancy to her. But if the emperor didn't like her, why would he hug her so tightly? Xiao Si had been by the emperor's side for at least 10 years. Other than the Ding Yuan princess, Xiao Si had never seen the emperor touch a girl's clothes. There was definitely something strange about this matter. Mo Chuan carried the green-clothed girl into the room, but he did not put her down. Rather, he hugged her even tighter. His eyes that had been silent for a long time were filled with a strong passion that seemed like it was about to burst into flames. Ning. He looked at the girl in his arms and said in a soft voice. The girl chuckled and said, "Now that there's no one here, why don't you put me down?" Mo Chuan also smiled. His smile was like the thawing of the glacier and the blooming of spring flowers. Chapter 884. Mo Chuan's voice was relaxed with a trace of teasing. The girl's face turned even redder and her white skin revealed a faint blush. Seeing this, Mo Chuan's heart skipped a beat and he couldn't help lowering his head. "Woo, stop messing around." She covered his mouth and laughed like a bell. "I'm so ugly, you can still kiss me. In my eyes, you will never be ugly." He pulled her hand away, and his warm and eager lips landed firmly on hers. He hugged her tightly. She raised her arms and wrapped them around his neck. The two of them hugged tightly and kissed. Both of their hearts were immersed in the joy and sweetness of happiness, forgetting everything around them. The air began to heat up. Her body was soft and warm and her skin was soft and creamy. A sweet scent lingered in Imo Chuan's nose and he gradually couldn't control himself. His lips slid down her slender white neck. "Don't, Imo Chuan, it's ticklish." She smiled as she avoided his lips. "Do you remember what I said? If you say no, I'll kiss you once." Imo Chuan hugged her and kissed her, but he felt like he couldn't use any strength. So he walked over to the bed and placed her on the bed. His body also pressed down, but he didn't cover her body as he was afraid of hurting her. He kissed her lips again, blocking the protest she didn't even have time to say. He closed his eyes and kissed her intensely and passionately. His lips were soft and fiery, warm and scorching, bringing with it a scalding heat that penetrated straight into her heart. Chen Ning's face turned red and she gasped for breath, feeling like she couldn't handle his passion. She wanted to avoid him and let herself catch her breath, but he followed her like a shadow, not letting her leave at all. His kiss became more and more fiery and her heart almost jumped out from his kiss. Her cheeks were even hotter than fire, but a numb feeling swept over her like a tide, making her feel ecstatic. Her eyes, which were still open, became blurry. She looked at his handsome face, his straight nose, and his long, black eyelashes. She was in a daze. This Imo Chuan usually looked cold, but who would have thought that when he was passionate, he would be like a ball of fire that could melt a person. She was just a mortal, she couldn't handle this kind of passion from him. It was just a kiss, yet he was already so passionate. If they waited until their wedding night, would he transform into a ferocious beast and eat her up, leaving not even the dregs of her skin and bones? She suddenly shivered. Imo Chuan was currently kissing her in an intoxicated manner. Feeling her trembling, he let go of her and asked, "Ning, are you cold?" His entire body was on fire, and his body was boiling hot. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He was extremely hot, but she was shivering. He looked at her in his embrace. Her cheeks were red and because of his kiss, her lips were red and moist. The shyness of a young girl on her face made people's hearts beat faster. She was clearly moved just like him. "No, I'm not cold." She shook her head. Thinking of that ridiculous thought, her face became even redder. "Your face is red. Tell me, what were you thinking when I kissed you, on?" His eyes seemed like they could see through her thoughts. It made her heart panic and she quickly closed her eyes. I wasn't thinking of anything." Chapter 885. But I was just thinking about it. Do you want to know what I was thinking about? His voice was low in her ear, and the hot breath rushed into her ear, causing her body to tremble again. I don't want to know at all." She didn't need to ask to know that what he was thinking was definitely not a good thing. Her face was pressed against his chest and she could feel his strong heartbeat. His body was really hot. He opened her palm and interlaced his fingers with hers, tightly holding them. Then he said with a soft laugh, "I was thinking about our wedding night. 3 days later, I want to hug you like this and kiss you. Then I also want to." His lips were close to her ear and he said something in a low voice that only she could hear. Chen Ning's face turned red to her ears. She wanted to avoid him, but he was tightly hugging her and the warm aura from his body enveloped her. She didn't want to run away from him. Imo Chuan. She looked up at him. Her eyes sparkled as she revealed a smile like a flower blooming. "On." He looked at her with a gentle gaze. His face was filled with deep emotions. "Is it really good for us to lie to the Empress Dowager like this? In less than 3 days, I believe that she will quickly find out that I am not on the list of people she has invited into the palace. If she finds out the truth, she will definitely be very angry. Chen Ning slightly knit her brows and spoke in a worried voice. This plan was made by Imo Chuan. She didn't agree to it at first, but Imo Chuan was very stubborn and didn't allow her to refute him at all. What birthmark, what lame foot, it was all Imo Chuan's ideas. Chen Ning of course knew why Imo Chuan wanted her to do this. He wanted her to change her appearance and appear in front of Empress Dowager Zhou with a completely different appearance, seeing if Empress Dowager Zhou's impression of her would change. But she never thought that Empress Dowager Zhou's attitude towards her would change from indifference to caring more and more about her. Especially when she heard Empress Dowager Zhou's words of protection, she was so moved that she almost burst into tears. She could see the warmth and love in Empress Dowager Zhou's eyes that she had never seen before. This warm gaze was like a loving mother looking at her child, making her feel incomparably close to Empress Dowager Zhou. She could feel the warmth of a mother's love from Empress Dowager Zhou. It was because of this that she felt guilty and uneasy. Silly girl, how could Imperial Mother be angry? She doesn't know how much she likes you right now. You don't know how much she likes you right now. I didn't expect you to conquer my mother in less than half a day. You don't know how stubborn she is. Imo Chuan stared at her with sparkling eyes. His eyes were filled with deep admiration and admiration. He had seen everything that had happened today. He appeared calm and didn't even look at her, but no one knew that the corner of his eyes had been following her and hadn't left her for even a moment. Chapter 886. As for her performance in the Happy Heart Pavilion, it made him even more surprised. Because those 3 questions were all spontaneous, in order to be fair, he did not give her any special treatment. He believed that with her abilities, she would definitely be able to overcome all difficulties and win in the end, but he never thought that she would be even more outstanding than he imagined. Not only did she win over him, she also won over Empress Dowager Zhou. It was because he could see that Empress Dowager Zhou was more and more appreciative of her that Imo Chuan did the opposite. He deliberately looked down on her and mocked her. The more Empress Dowager Zhou liked her and protected her, the more he looked down on her and looked down on her. In the end, everyone was tricked by him. Other than her, no one else knew that when she displayed her talent, the happiest person in the crowd was him. Of course, the final result was the same as he expected and was even better than he expected. He thought that even if Empress Dowager Zhou appreciated her talent, she would still be worried about her appearance and limp foot. He never thought that Empress Dowager Zhou's love for her would make her not care about her appearance at all. Of course Empress Dowager Zhou would never have thought that the Empress she had carefully chosen for her son would be her son's most beloved girl. When she learned the truth, it was unknown what kind of mood she would have. Imo Chuan's heart was filled with joy because this matter was even smoother than he had imagined. When Empress Dowager Zhou pointed at her and firmly said that this was the Empress she had chosen for him, he almost couldn't hold back his laughter. He really couldn't suppress the joy in his heart, so he recklessly picked her up and left. He had to find a place to share the joy in his heart with her, otherwise he felt like he was going to explode. But Chen Ning was not as happy as Imo Chuan. She felt that the more Empress Dowager Zhou liked her, the more disappointed she would be after learning the truth. Imo Chuan, are we just going to keep hiding it like this? But paper can't hide fire forever. As long as the Empress Dowager sends people to investigate, they will find that I don't exist at all. She gave a faint sigh. So what? You are the Empress she gave me in front of everyone. You are right in front of me, I can hug you and kiss you, who says you don't exist? Imo Chuan lowered his head and kissed her again. Her lips were as sweet as honey and he couldn't get enough. Thinking that in 3 days, she would truly belong to him, the blood in his body began to boil. The two of them had their noses touching and their breaths smelling each other as they tightly hugged each other. The temperature in the room gradually rose and their bodies became even hotter. Mo Chuan thought, no, he couldn't keep being intimate with her like this, otherwise he wouldn't be able to control himself. But he couldn't bear to leave her lips no matter what. Aunt Su Jin, His Majesty said that no one is allowed to disturb them. You can't go in. Little Four's shrill voice suddenly came from outside the palace doors, causing the two people in the room to feel as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them. They immediately calmed down. I have an important matter to discuss with the Emperor. Don't try to stop me. I really can't do that. I don't have that kind of courage. His Majesty, he ordered me to see no one. Chapter 887. He thought in his heart that the Emperor had carried a girl into his bedroom for the first time and then closed the door. There was no need to ask, he was definitely pampering that girl. When he stood guard at the palace gates, his heart was filled with curiosity. This was the first time the Emperor was pampering a girl, but what was this pampering about? Was it two people hugging each other to sleep without any clothes on? But it was broad daylight, how could they sleep? He had been cleansed in the palace since he was young, so he didn't know much about the matters between men and women. He couldn't understand it no matter how much he thought about it. Although Su Jin was over 40 years old and still kept her chastity, she had been in the palace for a long time and knew more about this matter than Xiao Si. When she heard the word, sleep, her face couldn't help turning red. Her heart felt like it was being fried and she became even more anxious. Did the Emperor carry a girl in? She asked. Aunt Su Jin, you even know this. That's right, the Emperor brought a girl wearing a green robe into the room, he must be pampering her. Aunt Su Jin, in all these years, the Emperor has never pampered a maid before. That girl is the first, how could this servant dare disturb the Emperor's mood? Xiao Si said with a smile. Su Jin slapped the back of Xiao Si's head and scolded, pampering. If this servant keeps talking nonsense, I'll report this to the Empress Dowager and cut off your tongue. Quickly report this to me, I must see the Emperor. As soon as Xiao Si heard the words Empress Dowager, his body trembled and he felt his butt start to hurt again. Good aunt, you can't tell the Empress Dowager. If the Empress Dowager loses her temper, this servant's butt will be beaten again, but this servant really doesn't dare disturb the Emperor. Xiao Si had a bitter face. Before he could finish, Su Jin cut him off. Go and report to the Emperor. Just say that I have news of Miss Chen Ning. The Emperor will definitely see me. Xiao Si jumped in fright, his eyeballs almost popping out. Chen Ning. You're talking about the princess consort. No, she's not the princess consort, she's the East Qin crown princess. He stuttered. That's right. Just say it like this and see if the Emperor wants to see me or not. Chen Ning also clearly heard Su Jin's last few words. She immediately sat up on the bed and said in a soft voice, and Su Jin must have found out. Mo Chuan, I want to see her. Chen Ning also heard Su Jin's last few words. She immediately sat up on the bed and said in a soft voice, and Su Jin must have found out. Mo Chuan, I want to go see her. You're not allowed. Mo Chuan stopped her, princess consort. Mo Chuan, we can't hide this matter. Since Aunt Su Jin dared to come see you, she must know the truth. Moreover, she has always been very good to me, so she wouldn't harm me. How about we tell her the truth? I believe that she will help us. She's the closest person to Imperial Mother. If she knows, she'll tell Imperial Mother first. So, no. Time, Mother's time, Chinta was time to say in. Chen Ning time and to for me. To see the person my heart. I to. Mo su time, chen to. Mo to. He raised his voice, Xiao Si, invite Aunt Su Jin to the side hall. This one will be there soon. Xiao Si was in a dilemma, but when he suddenly heard the Emperor's voice, he instantly became spirited and replied, Yes, Emperor. Chapter 888. Su Jin waited in the side hall for half a cup of tea's time before she heard footsteps coming from the door. Someone had come in. She lowered her head and immediately bowed down. Greetings to the Emperor. This servant has something to report to the Emperor. She felt a pair of warm, soft, and smooth hands holding her hand, and a clear and melodious voice rang out. Aunt Su Jin. Su Jin's body trembled. This voice was very familiar. She looked up in disbelief and saw a beautiful face like a lotus flower. Her eyes were like lacquer, looking like she wanted to speak. Her face was like a painting, looking fresh and refined. Her face was clean without any makeup, and it was clear that she had just washed her face. There were still a few crystal-clear water droplets on her face, and without that shocking birthmark, this was Chen Ning's face. Only she was still wearing the lame-footed girl's green robe with her skirt fluttering in the wind. Su Jin was so shocked that she fell to the ground. Although she had guessed that the green-clothed girl was Chen Ning, when Chen Ning's true appearance appeared in front of her, she was still fiercely shocked. Wang, princess consort. No, you are Miss Shin. She stuttered and spoke incoherently. She raised her hand to rub her eyes and looked at Chen Ning again. Chen Ning smiled as she pulled her up, and is truly smart, being able to guess my identity this quickly. Aunt, please sit. Chen Ning smiled as she pulled her up, and is really smart, you've already guessed my identity. Aunt, please sit. She pulled Su Jin to a chair and sat opposite her. She poured a cup of tea and handed it to Su Jin. Auntie, have a cup of tea to calm yourself down, she said softly. Su Jin took the tea in a trance and drank it in one gulp. She didn't notice the taste of the tea at all. Her heart was full of questions. Countless doubts emerged one by one. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. After a while, she let out a long sigh. Miss Chen, it really is you. You. How can you be this bold, thinking of this method to tease the Empress Dowager? If the Empress Dowager knew of this, she would definitely be very angry. Although she said it in a complaining tone, her words were filled with concern. Chen Ning looked down in embarrassment and said in a low voice, I also know that deceiving the Empress Dowager like this is wrong, it's all my fault. This matter has nothing to do with you, it was all this one's idea. Mo Chuan's voice suddenly came from the door. Su Jin was shocked and quickly stood up from the chair to bow down, this servant greets the Emperor. Aunt Su Jin, no need to be so polite. Since you've come to this one, you must know the truth and have guessed Ning-er's identity. That's right, the Empress Mother has chosen for this one is Ning-er. Mo Chuan walked in front of Chen Ning and held her hand, deeply looking at her. All of this was this Shin's idea. This Shin had her change her appearance because I wanted her to appear by Mother's side with a completely different appearance. I wanted Mother to discover her talent and virtue. In the end, Mother really did have a discerning eye and chose her out of all the women, betrothing her to this Empress. Aunt Su Jin, what do you think this Shin did wrong? He looked at Su Jin with a piercing gaze. Su Jin was suffocated by his overbearing aura. She lowered her head and looked down. She felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. Chapter 889. Su Jin bit her lips and knelt down in front of Mo Chuan. She raised her head and gathered her courage to say this. Only if the Empress Dowager knows the truth, she won't be able to take this shock. Emperor, you don't know how happy the Empress Dowager is right now. This servant has been by the Empress Dowager's side for so many years, but this is the first time I've seen the Empress Dowager so happy. This servant really can't bear to disappoint her. Emperor, the Empress Dowager has always had high hopes for you. Although she is very strict with you, in her heart, the person she loves the most is you. Could you bear to disappoint the Empress Dowager? Her words were filled with emotion and it made Emo Chuan silent. He looked at her for a long time without saying a word. Emperor, this servant knows that you and Miss Chen are in love and this servant is also willing for you two lovers to be together. It's fine if you want to take Miss Chen as a concubine or concubine. The Empress Dowager loves her son, so she won't stop you, but if you insist on taking Miss Chen as the Empress. The Empress family name will be written in the royal family's genealogy, so how will you announce Miss Chen's identity? The Empress Dowager has already ordered the rights minister to prepare the 3 letters and 6 gifts for Miss Chen and has also given this asking name gift to this servant. Emperor, how do you want this servant to report to the Empress Dowager? Emo Chuan raised his brows and looked deeply at Qin Ning. In a clear voice, he said, the one this one wants to marry is her, not her family's genealogy. No matter who she is, this one will marry her. This one wants to announce to the world that this one's empress is called Qin Ning. It doesn't matter if she is Great General Chen's daughter or not, the one this one wants to marry is her. You can just report this to mother like this. Su Jin's face turned white and she felt powerless. She looked at Emo Chuan in a daze, not saying a single word. She was only thinking in her heart, this is going to be a big mess, what should I do? What should I do? Aunt Su Jin. Chen Ning took a step forward and helped her up from the ground. She said in a soft voice, don't blame the Emperor, he has this kind of personality. Don't be anxious, we'll slowly come up with a plan. But Miss Chen, didn't you already marry to East Qin to become the crown princess? You. Why did you come back to the capital? Your current identity, are you the crown princess? The Dingyuan princess? Or is it Great General Chen's daughter? Su Jin looked at Qin Ning in a daze. Her heart was already in a mess. I am not General Chen's daughter, the Dingyuan princess, or the East Qin crown prince's princess. Everyone knows that General Chen's daughter Qin Ning is already married to the East Qin crown prince and I am just a normal girl without any status, but my name is still Qin Ning. She revealed a faint smile. She was speaking the truth, but it was a truth that even Emo Chuan could not understand. Because she was a wandering soul from a different world. The real her was no one, she was herself. Throwing away the identity of the original Qin Ning was like throwing away a heavy shackle. She felt her entire body relax. Ning of Su of Qin. That's right, Aunt Su Jin, she is a normal commoner girl. She is the Empress mother personally appointed for this one, her name is, Qin Ning. Emo Chuan said word for word. Chapter 890. You don't need to say anything. Since you're worried that mother will be sad if she knows the truth, then you should hide it from her. As long as you don't say anything, mother won't ask because the person she trusts the most is Aunt Su Jin. As for the 3 letters and 6 ceremonies, this one doesn't need them. This one will give a decree and remove all of these ceremonies. This one just wants to have a simple and grand wedding in 3 days. Emo Chuan suddenly winked at Su Jin. That light expression stunned Su Jin. She had never seen the Emperor this mischievous in her life, not even when he was young. He always had a serious expression on his face since he was young, always having an expressionless face. But now, the Emperor seemed to have changed into a different person. Not only could he smile, but the expressions on his face had also become vivid and rich. Could it be that all of these changes were brought about by this girl called Ning? Su Jin gave a sigh. Her heart had already softened, but she was still a bit worried. Emperor, paper can't cover fire in the end. This servant can help you hide it for now, but can this matter be hidden from the Empress Dowager for a lifetime? The Empress Dowager will know the truth sooner or later. This one doesn't plan on hiding it from Mother for a lifetime, this one only wants you to help this one hide it for 3 days. When this one is married to her and the rice is cooked, when she has this one's flesh and blood in her stomach, do you think Mother will still be so cruel as to force this one to divorce her? Mo Chuan looked at Ning with a faint smile. His eyes moved from her face to her stomach. Ning's face instantly turned red as she stomped her feet and shouted, Mo Chuan. You. Me what? Could it be that after we get married, you don't want to help me give birth to a child? You don't want to spend a lifetime with me? Mo Chuan reached out to grab her. He lifted her chin and kissed her lips without any explanation. This time, not only was Ning's face red, even Su Jin's face was burning hot. Her eyes didn't know where to look. She found that the room was too small and there was no space for her to stay in at all. If she stayed here any longer, her heart would jump out of her chest. Su Jin hurriedly retreated from the side hall and closed the door for the two people who were still tightly hugging each other. She turned around and quietly walked away. When she was out of the palace, she patted her chest and the fire on her face slowly subsided. It seemed that there was no power in this world that could separate these two people who were deeply in love. Su Jin could not do it and she believed that even the Empress Dowager could not do it. Since it was like this, why couldn't she help them? She had already thought of a way to deal with it. When she thought of the two people who were hugging each other sweetly, she couldn't help but feel happy for them. A faint smile appeared on her lips. Empress Dowager, this servant has already done what you asked and has already found out about that girl's family. It really was this servant's fault for not doing things well and making a mistake. That girl is one of the commoner girls you invited into the palace. Her family is in the east of the capital city and her family is very ordinary, but she is very diligent and loves to study. Returning to the Peaceful Life Palace, Su Jin reported the lie she had already prepared to the Empress Dowager. She said it in a very orderly manner, but she deliberately hid Ning's name. Chapter 891. She silently thought, Empress Dowager, this servant really didn't mean to help the Emperor and Miss Chen lie to you, but rather I couldn't bear to break them up. If you know the truth in the future, if you want to beat or scold me, just come at this servant. I just hope that you won't break them up. Empress Dowager Zhou did not doubt her words at all. She didn't even ask anything else as she excitedly pulled Su Jin's hand. You came back just in time. The clothing department has just sent over the clothes for the Emperor's wedding and this widow's eyes are already starting to blur. Quickly help this widow choose, which one is the best for the Emperor to wear on his wedding day. Su Jin said with a smile, all right, I'm just afraid that this servant's eyes aren't good and the one I choose won't be to the Empress Dowager's liking. You've been by this widow's side for so many years, always doing things that suit this widow's liking. The one you choose will definitely be the one this widow is most satisfied with. Empress Dowager Zhou revealed a smile. As Mo Chuan expected, Empress Dowager Zhou did not ask because she was too busy. There were only 3 days until the Emperor's wedding and there were too many things she had to prepare in these 3 days. She was so busy that she didn't even have time to sleep. Although she was this busy, Empress Dowager Zhou did not feel tired at all. She was filled with excitement and joy. Seeing Empress Dowager Zhou like this, Su Jin was both happy and worried. As the wedding approached, she became more and more nervous. The news of the Emperor's wedding spread through the streets of the capital city like it had wings overnight. To the citizens, this was the second most joyous matter. Moreover, they had heard that the Empress that the Emperor wanted to marry was a commoner girl. She was not a noble girl of illustrious birth or a daughter of a noble family, but a girl from an ordinary commoner family like them. This caused their love and respect for the emperor to increase a bit. One after another, they inquired about which family's girl was so lucky that she suddenly flew up the branches and turned into a phoenix. But no matter how they asked, no one could find the future empress' family background, and they didn't even know her name. But none of this was important. It did not decrease the love and respect the citizens had for their young emperor at all. They were now warm, full, and well-fed. This was all brought to them by the young emperor, so every family began to get busy preparing for the emperor's wedding. There were lanterns in front of each house and the streets were cleaned. The streets of the capital were cleaned and everyone had a happy expression on their faces. It was like the one getting married was not the emperor, but rather themselves. This news naturally reached Chu Xiaoyang's ears. Ever since Chen Ning had married to East Qin, he had never left the house, not taking a single step out of the palace. Every day, he would lock himself in the stone room that imprisoned Chen Ning, lying on the bed that she had once laid on, drinking himself into a drunken stupor. He did not go to court at all. He did not care about what happened in court at all. Because she had left, she had also taken his heart with her. His chest was empty, and he spent his days in a drunken stupor. Sometimes, when he was drunk, he would hug the two cold chains and cry silently. He thought of all the wrong things he had done to her, and regret gnawed at his heart like a poisonous snake. Ning, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Chapter 892. Chu Xiaoyang closed his eyes and felt tipsy, but his mind was still very clear. His mind was filled with images of her face. There were angry, frowning, unhappy, and happy faces, but no matter which face it was, he would never get tired of looking at it. He opened his eyes and there was only darkness in front of him. There was no face or anything else. She had already left, marrying to the East Qin tens of thousands of miles away. He would never see her again. Tears flowed down from the corner of his eyes as he silently cried. There was no one here, only him. No one would see his weak side and no one would think that his iron-blooded and emotionless highness would hide in this dark stone room one day, crying like a helpless child. There was suddenly the sound of hurried footsteps coming from the corridor. Your Highness. This servant has something to report. It was Chu Xiaoyang's personal attendant, Xiaowenzi's voice. Scram! Chu Xiaoyang gave a hoarse roar, just like the angry roar of a wounded beast. He grabbed the wine jug in his hand and threw it. The bronze wine jug hit the stone door and made a loud sound, scaring Xiaowenzi into stopping. Xiaowenzi pursed his lips. He knew that His Highness' mood was at its worst right now, but he still had to pluck the fur from the tigers because he had something to report to His Highness. Your Highness, this servant has just received news from the palace. In 3 days, the Emperor will be holding a grand wedding and has invited Your Highness to attend. Scram! Chu Xiaoyang roared out again. His voice passed through the heavy stone door and made Xiaowenzi tremble in fear. He quickly lightened his footsteps and left, not even daring to speak loudly. Chu Xiaoyang knit his brows and shook his drunk head. What did Xiaowenzi say just now? The Emperor was going to have a grand wedding. He abruptly jumped up from the bed and stood barefoot on the cold stone floor. The cold air flowed up his soles and sobered him up a bit. The Emperor was going to have a grand wedding. Who was he going to marry? Could it be Ning? Once he thought of Chen Ning, all of his drunkenness disappeared. He immediately opened the stone door and charged out of the stone room, shouting at the long corridor outside. Xiaowenzi, scram back here for this king. Xiaowenzi, who had not reached the end of the corridor, trembled and his legs went soft. He quickly ran back and knelt down on the ground. You said the Emperor was going to have a grand wedding. Who is he going to marry? Tell this king clearly. Chu Xiaoyang grabbed Xiaowenzi's clothes and lifted him up. Replying to your highness, this servant. This servant doesn't know, this servant really doesn't know. Xiaowenzi replied in a trembling voice. There were pinewood torches lit on the corridor walls and the flickering light shined on Chu Xiaoyang's face. Xiaowenzi almost did not dare believe his eyes. He simply couldn't believe that the unkempt, dirty, and drunken man in front of him was the handsome, elegant, and beautiful Prince Yu. Chu Xiaoyang was enraged. His eyes turned red and he raised his leg, heavily kicking Xiaowenzi in the stomach. Xiaowenzi flew out and his back hit the stone wall, spitting out a mouthful of blood with a pu sound. You Don, this king Don, this king, he, this, he, you, and. Chapter 893. Commoner Girl. Ugly Monster. And a Cripple. When Chu Xiaoyang heard this, he let out a sigh of relief. But following this, he charged over to pick up Xiaowenzi. Nonsense, how could the Empress Dowager allow an ugly cripple to be the Empress? This is impossible. Yes, it's true. This servant heard that this ugly monster Empress was personally chosen by the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager held a garden party and invited several dozen noble and commoner girls into the palace to choose an Empress for the Emperor, but I don't know why, but the Empress Dowager chose an ugly cripple for the Emperor. Moreover, in 3 days, the Emperor will be getting married and taking that ugly monster as his Empress. Chu Xiaoyang finally believed it. After staring blankly for a while, he suddenly raised his head and laughed loudly. Ha, 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 ha. Chuo Chuan, you've been scheming to take her away from me, but you've taken her heart and you can't take her body. Ha, ha, you actually want to marry an ugly cripple as your Empress. This is heaven's punishment for you. Retribution for you. Ha, ha, ha. He laughed until tears came out. The more he laughed, the louder he became. His voice echoed throughout the entire corridor. When Xiaowenzi saw Chu Xiaoyang laughing like this, his heart became more and more afraid. He couldn't help moving back. All of Chu Xiaoyang's depression over the past few days seemed to have been swept away. He took large steps and quickly left the underground stone room, coming back outside. Hearing that Imo Chuan was going to marry an ugly monster as his Empress, it actually cured his self-abandonment. Standing in the courtyard, he narrowed his eyes and looked at the sunlight in the courtyard. He took in a deep breath of fresh air and felt his vitality return to his body. Chu Mo Chuan, in 3 days, this king will definitely enter the palace to attend your wedding. This king wants to personally see you and that ugly cripple get married. Ha ha, it will be very interesting, this king is really looking forward to it. Chu Xiaoyang's eyes sparkled with excitement and anticipation. He simply couldn't wait to enter the palace to personally witness this interesting wedding. But when his eyes swept over and fell onto his reflection in the pond, he was instantly shocked by the figure in it. Who was that dirty and unkempt man who looked like a beggar? It couldn't be him, right? How did he end up like this? His face was filled with shock as he looked at his reflection in the water. He suddenly shouted, "Someone, quickly prepare a bath for this king." He definitely couldn't appear at the wedding like this. He didn't like it and Ning-er wouldn't like it either. Ning-er. Ning-er. Chu Xiaoyang muttered her name and his heart suddenly began to heat up. He was thinking, if Ning knew that the man she loved was going to marry someone else in just a few days, would she be sad? Would she regret her decision? She would regret it. In this world, there was no man who loved her more than Chu Xiaoyang and was even more sincere towards her. No matter if she was married or not, he would still love her like before. He would never be like that cold-hearted man, marrying someone else. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.